Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. My name is Brando, your weed commando, and this is the weekly podcast where we try to get through a shitload of stories. I have 30 tabs opened. They're not all like stories. I'm not going to have to read them all, so I try not to bore you. And let me just, for people that don't know much about me, I'm not a news guy. This is not breaking news. These are not even stories that I write or whatever. I'm just an average guy like everybody else who happens to also be somebody who's been involved with cannabis my whole life. Call it what you will. Before the laws changed, I was doing my thing in the underground, and that's why not a lot of people know about me, I guess. It's kind of hard to come out of that closet, you know. But anyway, enough about me. I just read these stories because I have an opinion, and I like to share my opinion, and I feel like my opinion is rooted in common sense. So I don't really have a bunch of radical positions or anything on any of this. I just think this is just, how somebody should feel knowing that the government lied to us about everything there is to do with drugs, and they're continuing to do it. And when it comes to cannabis, they've been demonizing this plant for over 80 years and for no fucking reason at all. Oh yeah, and I do drop some F-bombs from time to time. And it's not really out of anger or whatever. It's just because I guess I've been in the military. I've been in jail before. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying I've been out in the world, and I found out that people that swear are usually pretty smart. I've never had a problem with anybody swearing. The people that really have a problem with it, usually the problem is usually within themselves. I do try to keep it limited, though. Believe me, but it's just, to me, it's just like an adjective or a pronoun or something that just gets thrown in there as an additive. I'm not trying to be like, emphasize the swearing, and I hope I don't come off like that. And I know that there's probably older people that watch my show, and there's probably kids that watch my show, because it's educational. I do look at a lot of studies and stuff because I'm trying to break the stigma. The stigma is what the mainstream media pounds into your head. You know, that marijuana is a joke, something to laugh about, and munchies, something to do with being a stoner and forgetting things. But at the same time, it also lands you in jail. So they got to kind of make it sound serious too. But in reality, the news just does that with everything, if you noticed. It's like a pun contest. The headlines, the reporters giggling about the stupid puns, and I fucking hate it, alright? I don't like the puns, I don't like the weed jokes, I don't like none of that crap. That's kind of why I started doing this show, is to add, some honest opinions alongside of, like, just talking to people straight about this, not trying to dress it up with a lot of funny shit or whatever. And I can be funny from time to time. I try, like I said, I try not to be boring, so I side on the air of humor. Like I said, enough about me. Let me do some shilling real quick. As a matter of fact, speaking of shilling, I'm gonna mention again about Alexis Bortell. She has the One Love Organics. And I'll put a link again to this site on Shopify. Proceeds go to help her fund her other operation, which feeds needy people. And their community is the cannabis refugees you've probably heard about before. The medical marijuana refugees that had to move to Colorado from whatever state that there was that totally sucks about, having no compassion at all for kids that have epilepsy. And so they had to go to Colorado where you could get the medicine to treat your seizures, and she's been seizure free for 3 years. Meanwhile, I have this t-shirt here that is a mock-up of the contains THC protocol issued by the state to people that manufacture medical marijuana products. If it contains THC, it has to have this label on it in Michigan. And I'm shilling those for myself to raise a little money. Let's just say that I have plans this year to do some more live shows and go on other people's shows, so I'm going to need some help. And I'm going to see if maybe my audience might be able to chip in a few bucks, because I owe Comcast about $250, and that sucks because I don't want to pay it. I hate Comcast. If you've watched my show for a while, you know that I hate corporate media. They lie to you 24/7, and they expect you to bend to their whims. Instead of you getting a straight story, you just get the regular old propaganda, especially when it comes to the marijuana stories. I've time and time again done videos where it's like, oh, look, here's a headline, and whenever mainstream media picks it up, all the outlets do, the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, NBC, ABC, you name it. And if you look at the headline flavors, you can see the different puns and the Reefer Madeness that I keep telling you about. So yeah, you can go on over to Teespring and find that. I'll put the link below for that too. Yeah, proceeds go to me. I used to donate a little money to Normal, but I think I've met my quota with donating to Normal this year. But keep up the good work, Normal. And I am very poor. I'm just going to say that right now. No comment as to why, but my let's just say that my economy has been chipped away at pretty ridiculously because of the new medical marijuana laws in Michigan. I can't sell clones anymore. I used to sell a lot of clones. It used to be legitimately like one of the ways that I helped cover the cost of my patients' medicines. And now I can't do that. So things are really hit and miss here. And as far as Comcast goes, there's no way I'm paying for that with the little bit of money that I do have left over once in a while, you know. But yeah, if I get Comcast squared away, I'll be able to, you know, go on other people's podcasts and stuff, and that's kind of the main reason I want to do it. The reason I have internet in general is because of my Metro PCS Wi-Fi that I can use and do some things, but it's just not enough. They don't give me enough to stream or whatever. So that's all the shilling I got, and everything else is my introduction is done. We're going to move on into the news. We're going to start with international stories as usual. And how do I pull these stories? Well, it's a lot of different ways. I go to every corner of the globe and every corner of the web to find these stories. And whenever there's something trending, you can bet that I'm on top of it. So the UK had a situation where they could have voted to legalize medical marijuana, but apparently the Labour Party, which is actually the more liberal party, decided to filibuster. Well, they don't call it a filibuster, and in fact, since America gave filibustering such a bad name, they find that very offensive for you to call it filibustering. So let's just check it out. Furious debate over MPs' behavior in Parliament has erupted after a bill on cannabis reform was narrowly avoided in the House of Commons, and Twitter has exploded. Labour MP Paul Flynn was visibly astounded today as his colleagues on both sides of the House took so long to discuss other private members' bills, they ran short of time to address the cannabis reform bill he brought forward. Flynn, along with many Tory MPs, is calling for an urgent review of cannabis law, as sick people in the UK have no access to the Class B drug. Now, in the UK, Class B, let's just stop for a second. They follow the United Nations treaties that we follow to ban drugs. The treaties were done in the 1960s and 70s, and ever since then, you know, every member state of the United Nations has to basically come up with their own scheduling system or whatever. So a Class B is like Schedule 1 in America. So just so you know. Social media users as well as Flynn accuse MPs of filibustering or talking for so long a vote or debate cannot be held. However, when he accused his colleagues of the practice, Epping Forest Tory Eleanor Lang snapped at him from the speaker's chair. Flynn took aim at his Labour colleagues. Sandy Martin, MP, who he said talked so long the bill was avoided. And he tweeted, I intervene politely as possible on speech by Sandy from IP Switch that is eating into the time for the cannabis bill. Social media users were infuriated. Many are waiting to find out about cannabis reform to help with the pain suffered by loved ones. And you have a tweet about that tweet. This is shameful, and I hope his constituents remember it and vote him out next election. Lives are at stake. Remember, IP Switch, that monster at Sandy of IP Switch, talked nonsense to deny an epileptic young boy the right to live. Alfie's Hope. And again, Alfie's Hope. Alfie is the kid who has the epilepsy, that has the seizures, that needs the medicine, which is what prompted this whole thing to begin with. That's pretty sad that there's a little kid whose life is on the line here. Let's see if we can get a picture of him. Yeah, here we go. So there he is, man. This is the whole reason for this emergency effort in the UK to legalize medical marijuana, or like they said, to revisit the law, the cannabis laws. Even Russell Brand's on top of this. So I guess, yeah, that's Alfie of Alfie's Hope. And it's kind of a burn, you know. Some of these clips came out, and I went through this earlier, and I noticed that a lot of these clips came in the day of, or not clips, but just tweets came in the day of this of the hearing on the floor, so we don't get to see a lot of the aftermath or whatever like we do here with these tweets. Surely bills which would save thousands of lives in the UK should be prioritized. This is blatant filibustering. I'm so sorry that you have to deal with these kids of people, Paul. These kinds of people. We all thank you so much for making our voices heard. Cannabis could be legal. It could be legalized for medical use in Britain within the next 2 years, a leading campaign group has claimed. And the UK Parliament is set to consider a bill dealing with the Class B drug. Despite this, there is a growing feeling among cannabis campaigners that the UK will soon pass legislation to allow the use of medical marijuana. Speaking exclusively to RT, Peter Reynolds from Clear said a number of Tory MPs are now backing the use of the Class B drug to treat people with cancer and epilepsy. Quote, it is very unlikely the second reading will be heard. Most of them never get heard because there's simply no time for it. But more Tory MPs are beginning to support cannabis law reform. This is not something which will happen under Theresa May. So this is kind of like, you know, the Tories are like the Republicans and Theresa May is like Jeff Sessions. So as long as he's around, I don't think you're going to see Pete Sessions let any bills go up for a vote. And the Republicans in general are just like definitely in the way of anything hitting the floor. She keeps talking about the war on drugs. Once she has gone, I believe laws could be reformed within 2 years, perhaps within 1 year. MPs are scheduled to debate on the second reading of a private member's bill on cannabis law reform in Parliament brought by Labour's Paul Flynn. The bill is currently at the center of a national debate after the heartbreaking story of a child with epilepsy brought the attention to the Commons this week. Conservative MP for Reagate, Crispin Blunt. Is that, like in America we have Roy Blunt. He asked an urgent question about why the Home Office denied the family's request for a license to treat their son with cannabis, which reduces his epileptic fits dramatically. And to expound on that, the thing is that in the UK, a number of people have been granted special permission by the government to use medical cannabis. I'm not sure the exact number, but I have read reports about it, and I've read individual reports. And I've yet to read a report about anybody with epilepsy, though. The UK government argues that medical cannabis must go through the same rigorous testing that is applied to regular medicine. Some lawmakers argue legalization will increase the use of cannabis for recreation. Oh, come on. So the same arguments being applied as they do in America. Cannabis medicine contains 500 different molecules. All other medicines, around 99%, contain one molecule. Reynolds explained, you know what? The medical community needs to stop acting like science isn't a thing. We're fucking sick of it, all right? Quit acting like we're stupid and that you're smart because you can say, oh, look, we can make one molecule medicine and then we can patent that because it's one thing. If you got 500 different compounds and you can do different combinations of each one, it's kind of hard to patent that shit. As soon as you do, someone makes a different strain that don't have the same exact molecules. Shut the hell up, man. We are sick of you guys acting like science don't matter, all right? So, you know, your argument is garbage. Every one of them. You cannot apply the same process of regulation to single molecule medicine for a medicine with 500 molecules. This is absurd. It's simply an excuse. He's implying that this is just an excuse for people to get high. Tell that to the kids that are not having seizures when they use the medicine, especially the medicine that don't even get you high. The difference is recognized in other countries. In Holland, they have an office for medical cannabis. There is also separate authorities in the U.S. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the person that's for it, and he's saying that this is an excuse, that you can't, you know, apply the same process. But it's also like the other side uses that too. Oh, this is an excuse. You guys just want to get marijuana legalized so you can get high, and they say that all the way to the end. Even with Chris Christie saying it, well, someone's holding their sick kid right in front of them. Here, the government is just using the excuse of regulation to push cannabis through a system of medical trials costing tens of millions of pounds. We are talking about probably the oldest medicine known to man. There is an archaeological evidence. We have been using cannabis as medicine for 10,000 years. That's the longest clinical trial of medicine in history. However, Reynolds was keen to assert that cannabis, quote, is not the miracle cure that many people claim, and it does not cure cancer. It's been proven to help with palliative patients. It does help with chemotherapy, and it does help with epilepsy. There are now tens of thousands of cases to prove this. All right, so that's cool. You know, we can talk about what it can and can't do all day long, but you're not penetrating their layer of, oh, this is a plant and it has all these different compounds in it, so we can't patent it. That's the thing that they don't like. It's not that they don't think it works and all this shit. It's just that they don't like it because they can't make billions of dollars off of selling individual doses. Another thing they don't like about it, quite frankly, is that just about anybody can grow it. So here comes the accusations levied from, remember it was Paul Flynn, that's him.
And I let the House know that there will be a public demonstration outside in which democracy will work, and we will have a debate on the cruel effects of the present bill, on the cruel effects of the present law on young children and those in serious health difficulties, including a young boy who is suffering and his parents are suffering in a terrible way. What's happened here today has been a filibuster organised by one party, and I'm ashamed to say that I'm a member of that party.
Order!
That's what's been...
Order! I've allowed the Honourable Gentleman to make his point of order about his bill.
Now, if you haven't ever sat in on a fucking... on a House of Parliament session, this one's kind of tame. This one's really tame. This ain't nothing. You should check into it, man. I'm sure you can Google some shit or find some shit on YouTube. These guys are brutal. It's just out of control how they treat each other.
Bill, although he knows it is not a point of order, but I appreciated he had a point to make and I've allowed him to make it. I will not take from the Honourable Gentleman criticism of the chair by use of the word filibuster.
You gotta call a spade, I guess. Is that the saying? I don't know. I don't like that saying. It sounds racist for some reason. But anyway, you can't not call it a filibuster. Just because you don't like the word doesn't mean that's not what it is. I would like to know what these people that got up there and kind of like blocked this with talking too much, I would like to know what they were talking about, to be honest. But I don't think we're going to get that unless we was like rewind it and watch the whole thing. And I don't feel like doing that. But yeah, I guarantee you it was some frivolous bullshit. Let's check in with Jamaica. 2 medical marijuana companies have begun the first ever legal harvest of their crops, signaling that the island nation is well on its way to becoming a full-fledged medical marijuana market. Kea Farms reportedly started its harvest on February 20th, the Jamaica Observer reported, while competitor Timeless Herbal Care said in a news release Tuesday that it also completed a harvest. Both harvests took place under the observance of the island's Cannabis Licensing Authority. Kea Herb House, a sister company to Kea Farms, is slated to begin medical marijuana sales next month, the Observer reported. The program has been years in the works following the 2015 change to Jamaican law that created the licensing authority and allows for private medical marijuana enterprises. Interesting. Still don't have any updates on their recreational aspirations or whether or not the Rastafarian farmers are going to get cut out of that too. But clearly, unless these people are, I don't know, I would have to look more into it, but it doesn't sound like the only 2 corporations that are going to run medical marijuana in Jamaica are grassroots Rastafarians. Maybe, who knows, I don't know. So Malta, poised to be the next domino to fall in European Union's medical cannabis wave. A lot of people are probably like, what's Malta right about now? The interesting thing about Malta is it is home to the oldest secret society. Yeah, like the Illuminati type shit or the Freemasons. Well, the Knights of Malta are even older than, they're the oldest. They're the oldest thing that's still going, where they have like, it's called chivalry or whatever, where you got knights, people get knighted, and it's ran by a grand master or some shit like that. So it's a very structured pyramid type secret society type thing. Not so secret, it's kind of out in the open. And they do a lot of charity work in the medical world with doctors, and you know, there's a lot of good things you can say they do. And they have their fingers in basically a lot of countries. We'll see a little bit more about that in the article. But yeah, kind of weird that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, someone steps forward and is about to take over production for the whole European Union. Let's check it out. A bill to regulate the production of medical marijuana in Malta would make the country among the first in the European Union to lay the groundwork for cannabis manufacturing and position it as a supplier to the 28-nation bloc, according to executives and analysts. The Production of Cannabis and Medical Use Act, which would apply to dried cannabis, cannabis oil, seeds, and derivatives, passed in its second reading February 20th in its committee review. The bill would not allow smokable marijuana in Malta. But I'm sure they'll be able to ship it to places where it's allowed. Accessibility to quality medical cannabis shall safeguard patients who will no longer need to opt for cannabis purchase from uncontrolled sources, with all the concerns that illicit forms of cannabis may entail, he said. Under the bill, a business wanting to produce medical cannabis would have to obtain a letter of intent from the country's economic development agency, Malta Enterprise, which would constitute preliminary approval. After that, the Medicines Authority would issue a license for the premises. 3 medical cannabis companies have already signed letters of intent, and discussions with 3 more companies are at an advanced stage, according to the Deepak Anand, Vice President of Government Relations for the Vancouver, British Columbia-based consultancy Cannabis Compliance. The Medicines Authority would regulate the industry. Another notable change under the bill, all doctors accredited with Maltese Medical Council could prescribe medical cannabis. Only some government-approved doctors could do so currently. All products would have to comply with EU good manufacturing practices and internationally recognized quality standard. There will be job creation, and if the industry does take off, it would place Malta among the forerunners in Europe in terms of manufacturing and exporting, and would assumably be very profitable, said Jonathan Cilia, co-founder of the Valletta-based group Relief. Malta will be the latest domino to fall in Europe, Annan predicted. Quote, Malta being an EU member state and indeed one of the first to set up detailed cannabis manufacturing facilities is naturally positioned to be one of the most suitable cannabis suppliers to other member states as well as the rest of the world. The European medical cannabis market is the largest in the world with an estimated 35.7 billion euros per year according to a recent European Medicines Agency report. A number of other countries are laying the groundwork to export medical cannabis to the EU, including Israel, Portugal, and Denmark, but none have facilities up and running. And there you go. Malta is about to become the big player, like that list below that just talked about all those other guys, like Israel, for example, and Portugal. They've had medical marijuana for a long time. And in fact, Israel is like the leader of medical marijuana, everything. I mean, technology, research, development. They got the most different kinds of medicines. So it's hard to imagine that Israel didn't jump on this train before Malta stepped in. It's like Malta came out of nowhere. And there they are. Might have something to do with that Knights of Malta shit I was talking about. Who knows? Mexican cartels pushing the heroin. Now that we've got the weed covered, but do I believe this article? Or do I think this is just some more hype? It's hard to say. All right. Is it true, the things that they're going to say? Yeah, but is it, do we really want to like say for sure right now that they're totally, you know, it's like this, it's basically what I'm saying is maybe they're like looking ahead to what this is going to mean when even more of the market share, when they're basically, when sending weed across the border is just not even, it's going to cost them money rather than make them money. And it's probably already doing that in many situations. Well, I think it's a little too early to say this. This headline's a little premature. But they are pushing more heroin. And this is just a natural progression. I just think they're a little bit, you know, being alarmed about this probably isn't something that, you know, it's a diversion tactic. Hey, everybody, look at Mexico. They're doing this thing, man, where they're shipping in more heroin. Well, you know, we're still running Afghanistan, guys. That's 90-something% of all the world's heroin supply is being made in Afghanistan. Not just the poppies grown, but the labs are right there. They're making the heroin and shipping it out. Over 90%. And it's making it here because America consumes 80% of all the heroin in the world. So, do the math. Pretty much most of that heroin from Afghanistan is going to America. So I don't think that, you know, no matter how much the Mexican cartels push heroin up through the southern border, I don't think you're going to see it competing per se on the streets with the heroin that's produced in Afghanistan. Now, some of this Afghanistan heroin comes up through the southern border. The drug cartels have ways of getting their hands on it easier than anybody that's inside the borders of the continental United States, unless, of course, you're talking about the alphabet agencies, and who knows what, you know, what they're doing, how much of that traffic belongs to them. We can talk about that on another clip maybe someday. All right, Chihuahua, Mexico. As more U.S. states legalize the use of marijuana, Mexico's violent drug cartels are turning to the basic law of supply and demand. That means small farmers or campesinos in the state, in this border state's rugged Sierra Madre, who long planted marijuana to be smuggled into the United States, are switching to opium poppies, which bring a higher price. The opium gum harvested is processed into heroin to feed the ravaging U.S. opioid crisis. Quote, marijuana isn't as viable, so they switched to a more profitable product, said Javier Avila, a Jesuit priest in his region rife with drug cartel activists. What is a Jesuit priest? What's up with all these secret society type things popping up? Jesuits, as far as I know, they originally were formed to protect the secrets of the Rome, of the Catholic Church. They got this thing called the Vatican, and basically throughout the centuries, the Romans and the Catholics, they basically ravaged the whole earth and destroyed every religion that was there before them. And then they took all the secrets of these religion, all the religious texts and whatever, and they took them and they either destroyed them, or they took them and whatever they didn't destroy, they put in the basement of the Vatican. And the Jesuit people were like the people that protected that, you know. As far as I know, that's just what I've been told. That might not even be true. But anyway, for some reason we got to mention Jesuits. Because we're talking about Mexico. I don't know. They're pretty Catholic down there in Mexico. Laws allowing marijuana in states like Colorado, Washington, and California are causing shifts in the Mexican underworld that have also led to increased violence as the cartels move away from its cash cow of marijuana to traffic more heroin and methamphetamines. I guess we're not going to mention the cocaine that they move from even south of them. Like, they... Is there someone trying to keep that out of the news or something? I haven't heard about cocaine in a long time. U.S. Customs and Border Protection statistics show that marijuana seizures fell by more than half in 2012, while heroin and methamphetamine seizures have held steady or markedly increased. The switch in illegal drugs coincides with Mexico's hitting record 29,168 murders in 2017, the most since the country started keeping homicide statistics in 1997. The jump in violence stems from several factors: cartels splintering into smaller factions, power struggles with the formidable Sinaloa cartel after leader Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was arrested and extradited to the U.S., plus the rise of the violent Jalisco, am I saying that right? Jalisco New Generation cartel, the JNGC, which expanded nationally and moved in on El Chapo's turf. Few attributed Mexico's rising violence to just to legalize marijuana north of the border or the increased opioid crisis, but those changes in the U.S. are causing problems here. Like I said, I still think that's kind of an alarmist statement at this point. I really do. I really don't think either of those things are making things worse, and those things that they just mentioned, that bullet list up here, that literal bullet list, or the chopping of the heads off list, that's the driver of the fucking violence in Mexico. Here's two bodies of women lying on the sidewalk in Rufo Figueroa, which was a nice neighborhood in Acapulco where the tourists used to go. Well, it don't look like that's where you want to go on vacation right now. In Chihuahua, state prosecutor Cesar Peniche said criminal gangs on Mexico's Pacific coast used to traffic marijuana to California. Now those groups are looking for other routes to continue their trafficking by using border crossings further inland. See, they don't really care about getting the marijuana to the west coast so much. Or like, I think they just get it up through there because it's the easiest border. I don't know, but the bottom line is most of the places where they still sell their weed in America are the red states. You know, the states that don't want to legalize marijuana. That's where the Mexican weed still goes. So you have like all of the red states, and then a few states up north, and a few states out west. That's where you'll still be able to find Mexican, you can call it whatever you want, brickweed, whatever you want to call it. It's still coming in. It's still a part of the pie chart that makes these cartels even exist, you know. Quote, criminal groups enter the state of Chihuahua, and this causes confrontations, Peniche explained, quote, "It's creating conflicts between criminal organizations to win control of the roots because some markets have closed, but others have stayed open. This sparks violence." In Mexico's heroin-producing heartland of southern Geronimo state, the violence is so bad that the morgues are full and unable to handle all the bodies brought in for autopsies. The U.S. government recently toughened its travel warnings to Americans against visiting Guerrero, which includes the tourist resorts of Acapulco and Ixtapa, in addition to remote villages that rely on planting opium poppies. Growers in Guerrero, like those in northwest Mexico, also moved away from marijuana to focus on opium poppies, and they have no problem selling their harvest. Quote, "I'm talking with middlemen and others selling illegal drugs to the U.S. and has almost insatiable demand," is what they said. The U.S. has an almost insatiable demand. "The cartels are never sitting on product," said Miles Esty, producer of the Showtime series The Trade, which is filmed in Guerrero. Man, I'd be careful making statements like that and even being identified as the person filming documentaries. That's one of the things these cartel people are famous for, is killing people that do news or movies or fiction books even about the cartel stuff. Anything like that could get you killed. He said the cartels, quote, "saw a lot more demand for the heroin in the United States and responded." Now back to that people talking about the cartels getting killed tip. I believe somebody involved with this series, either that one or maybe it was even the one about El Chapo, or not El Chapo, but the one that was about the cartels in Colombia. Somebody involved with one of those projects, and it wasn't even somebody that was a writer or whatever, I don't think, but somebody involved with one of those projects got murdered, their car got shot up or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I probably shouldn't even mention it if I didn't have the full story, but it's just something to mention. And there's been several sensational writers that were pretty famous before they got assassinated by the cartels. So the cartels are also freelance in non-drug crimes such as kidnapping and extortion to make quick money and meet payroll for their foot soldiers, said Guerrero state government spokesman Roberto Alvarez Heredia. Alvarez also blames Mexico's northern neighbor for Guerrero's increased violence, saying it stems from lax U.S. gun laws and, quote, "a public health problem from the consumption of heroin." So yeah, the heroin problem definitely provides big time motive for people to do whatever crimes, black market style shit going on. And also the gun thing he's talking about isn't necessarily like, oh yeah, everybody can have a gun in America, so that's causing problems in Mexico. That's not really what he's talking about. He's talking about things that I always mention with pills and guns, is that if you really want to reduce the number of those in existence, you got to go after the manufacturer and regulate them. You got to tell them, hey, you can't keep cranking out like these kind of numbers. You can't keep producing, 5,000 freaking AR-15s a week. Who cares if you need to meet your numbers or whatever? And when it comes to the pills, you can't ship 1 million pills to a fucking warehouse outside of a town that has 3,000 people that live there. Because them pills are going to make it out of that warehouse. That's just the way drugs are. They corrupt everybody that they come into contact with. There's problems, man. And Mexico is definitely bearing the brunt of America's bad vices. It's like that South Park episode, everything's legal in Mexico. It's the American way. Catholic Bishop Salvador Rangel and others criticized the Mexican and local governments, pointing to corruption and accusing police of colluding with criminals. I think somebody was just talking about something like that. Rangel in the state capital of Chilpancingo claimed, quote, all of Guerrero is in the hands of narcotics traffickers, and called for the army to stop eradicating poppy crops until the government offers campesinos, that's the farmers, another way to make a living. Kids don't know how to read, but they know how to pick poppies, said Abel Barrera, director of the Thalchinlan Mountain Human Rights Center in Guerrero. Quote, people speak of plant varieties, how one variety produces more than another. There's a specialization, Barrera said. It's all becoming a culture, and it's become deeply rooted. Sorry, I'm stumbling hard over here. And there's where Guerrero is, and there's Acapulco. Here's Chihuahua. That's all the places I was just talking about, in case you're not big on geography. And I actually forgot where Guerrero was, and I didn't even realize that that was the country that Acapulco's in. Who knew, you know? I always used to dream of going on vacation in Acapulco, but I don't know if I really want to go there these days. Mexico, I don't know if we can change what's going on there over a long period of time. It's going to take some serious reflection on what went wrong with the last 40 plus years of the drug war. And prohibition is basically what it comes down to. Is if we're prohibiting production and sale of the drugs that people are doing that are causing all the problems, then the black market's going to always exist. And especially when you got Mexico right below us, who the economy basically pits people against, you know, decisions of the decision you make isn't really relative to whether something's legal or not. It's whether you want to survive or not. And when you know, well, there's all these cartel people that need people farming, and you could join the cartel and smuggle weed or smuggle heroin or whatever, meth, pills, coke, everything. America, it has this demand. There's such a demand for pharmaceutical pills in the black market even, that if you're a Mexican drug runner, you can still make a good living just smuggling prescription pills across the border. I'm not even talking about the ones that get you high. That's how bad it is. Anyway, Americans for Safe Access. You might have heard of them, but they're one of the leading advocate groups trying to make sure that a medical marijuana situation, you know, is there for people that need it, and that they have safe access. Basically means dispensaries, quite frankly. You know, a place where you can go, where you can see what the different products are, and you can be sure that they're regulated and tested and all this stuff, and that the price is fair enough to where you aren't going to go broke getting it, as opposed to the black market where it's pretty reasonable or whatever. So there's a lot of factors, and they've actually made this report card system here where they evaluate all the states that have medical marijuana programs. I wish they could go. You should go a step farther and evaluate the ones that don't, so you can just go around and look at the garbage that they got. There's only a few states left that don't have anything at all, like CBD or whatever. You have just a few. Is this West Virginia? West Virginia don't even have CBD. West Virginia, Indiana, these guys, Idaho. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know who you are exactly. Is one of these Iowa, maybe? Or is this the Dakotas? Yeah, North and South Dakota. So South Dakota, I don't know. Anyway, we can talk about that some other time too. This report reflects on a complete analysis of medical cannabis programs across the United States in an effort to objectively evaluate how these programs serve patients. Medical marijuana access in the United States. A patient-focused analysis of the patchwork of state laws has been updated, expanded, and refined over the last 3 years to convey the state medical cannabis, the state of medical cannabis in America, serve as a tool for comparing different laws and regulations, and assign simple letter grades. Our grading system has not yet awarded an A grade to any state. And if you listen to my videos about medical marijuana, I say that every time I profile a different state. I'm like, oh, here we go to this state and their medical marijuana program, which is the worst one ever. And I say that about all of them. So none of them get a grade of A or even B by me. So that's what it is. And I will put a link to this in the description as well. Let me make sure I do that. So this is what it is. This guide for patients to, I guess, you know, if you're going to be one of those medical marijuana refugees. What's going on here? Here we go. We're not loading. It don't want to load. Here we go. So, 0 deaths caused by cannabis, 46 states with medical cannabis laws, 2 million plus medical cannabis patients in the U.S., $500 million federal tax dollars spent on federal interference in medical cannabis states before the Raumenbacher-Farr Amendment. So, hey, the federal government saved $500 million right there. Not kicking in dispensary doors. 9,000 clinical trial data using cannabis for pain and patient years. 9,000 years. 50 plus qualifying medical conditions and medical cannabis programs. Average drop in opioid-related deaths in states with medical cannabis laws, 25%. Studies published on the endocannabinoid system, 30,000. Americans supporting medical cannabis, 89%. Again, whenever I talk to doctors and they criticize medical marijuana, I always tell them, hey, do you know anything about science? I know you know about medicine, so you must know a little bit about science. Sometimes they're like, you know, they think I'm being a smart ass or something. And they'll be like, whatever, you know, or yeah, sure, yeah, I know, I'm blah, 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 whatever. They got every flavor of answer. I always ask them if they've ever heard of the endocannabinoid system, and they say, of course. And I'm like, have you read about it? And they never do. They never have. And I think doctors, once they got done with school and they've been in practice for a few years, they get lazy. They don't want to learn nothing new. They think they're right about everything. And they don't want to hear anything that contradicts their system that they already have in their head as to how things are, how things work, who to believe, what to trust, and all that shit. Even though they've seen it right in front of their face, the negative effects of all the pharmaceuticals. Not just the opioids, but all of them. I mean, you're treating some symptom of something else usually. And there's all these side effects that almost like cancel out having a good day anyway. 89% of Americans support medical cannabis. $65 million in federal prescription drug cost savings. Medical cannabis states in 2013. 66 cannabinoids. Annual deaths caused by prescription drugs. And they're adding everything up. So, Bill Baggins, here you go. Prescription drugs. You can throw an extra 10,000 on that just for non-prescription drugs. And this is because of all kinds of different reasons, but I'm sure the number is stacked like they always do. If someone died and they had a prescription drug in them, they might have just threw that on the number even though the drug didn't cause it. 100 million number of Americans suffering from chronic pain. That's like 1 in 3 people, pretty much, are suffering from chronic pain. So the industry for pain is huge. That's why Big Pharma is basically like fighting tooth and nail against any legalization. This shows the growth of patients in medical marijuana states. This time we have 14 federal raids. 241 in between 2002 and 2008. So if you look at this, remember this is Bill Clinton and a little bit of George Bush, 14 federal raids. And then you have a little bit of Bush all the way up until Clinton got in, or Obama. Obama started in 2008, so that's 1 year of Obama. 241. You think they stepped up their game? And then between 2009 and 2013, which is all Obama, 262 raids. Not cool, man. So, you know, we don't know what's the number for federal raids. Have went to 2 between 2014 after the Rohrabacher Farr Amendment. So after they said, hey, you can't do this no more, they still had 2, but still, this is a big deal. And the Careers Act is introduced, but it, you know, we'll see what happens with the current bills, if we'll ever get a vote on it. I don't think we will, because they know it'll pass. And you know, this thing is very helpful for a lot of reasons. If you're doing a book report or something like that, they have all the research already done on all medical marijuana things, anything that has to do with medical marijuana. This is your one-stop shop for just a wide variety of analytical data. And quite frankly, once again, if you're going to be one of those medical refugees, you might want to look into it. Well, we've been talking about D.A.R.E. and how in the new federal budget, something like D.A.R.E. or just, I don't know what they called it, public service announcement money, $50 million is going to this new effort to breathe some new life into D.A.R.E. So this article, I'm not going to really go into it too much, but it's talking about how D.A.R.E. basically sticking to its old school approach. For 16 years, every elementary student in this small town in Massachusetts has learned about drugs from Kenneth Thaxter, but this year his lesson needed to change, and he was about to find out whether the students knew why. What do you know about marijuana, he asked. It's a drug, said a boy named Jack. There are different names for it, said Cassidy. There is a medical and legal, said Luke. It could actually save your life, said Chelsea. Okay, very good, Thaxter said, and then he began to explain. So right away, I think what he's learning, and he's been doing this 16 years, holy crap. So, you know, since about 2002, he's noticing that the kids are getting smarter and smarter, and it's going to be harder to pull one over on them when you're talking about cannabis. And the sad part is that's what happened to me. Like, I was taught about, you know, we had D.A.R.E. in our school when I was in like 6th grade. And it was like, you know, I'm not sure if I ever would have seen heroin at that age in the small town in the middle of nowhere that I lived, or any of that shit, really. Just weed and psychedelics like mushrooms and acid and shit like that. You could find those around town, but that's it, man. If you wanted anything harder than that, you had to hit the city. So that was kind of a weird education to get, you know, and basically it was heavily focused on weed, and we was getting word that, oh yeah, they want to ask you, you know, if you could don't be afraid to say your parents smoke weed. Have you smelled this before? Does your parents have this around the house? That's some pretty scary shit. Literally getting kids to narc on their fucking parents. And then what? Well, some people got their doors kicked in and lost their kids because their kids told that they fucking smoked weed. And if you don't believe me, I'm sure you can find these stories, or maybe even heard of it yourself. It's not an urban legend. I know people that went into this. So anyway, Massachusetts had become one of 8 states to legalize recreational marijuana, and in just a few months, anyone over 21 would be able to purchase it at a dispensary nearby. This, he thought, was a confusing message to send to kids. They'd grow up knowing that drugs are bad. Now they were hearing from older siblings and maybe even their parents that weed is just a plant and that plants are good, and it was up to Thaxter to convince them not to try it. See, this is the fucking problem with this stupid ass, you know, approach to drug education is you're acting like kids are so fucking stupid that you just say drugs are bad, okay, and they're just all gonna be like, okay, cool, we're not gonna do any of those. And then you don't distinguish between what drugs are used for, what drugs are bad and what drugs are good, as far as like for, you know, everybody uses drugs, you fucking idiot. Name me somebody that don't do drugs, like a Mormon or something, that you don't drink coffee, you don't smoke cigarettes, you don't eat sugary foods. I mean, you can basically say a lot of things are drugs, and a lot of things are habit forming, and a lot of things can even be addictive. So to just throw all this shit into one big pile and say these are drugs, they're bad, don't fuck with any of it. Kids are looking at you like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then you're saying that this plant over here that just looks like somebody picked this shit right off the fucking plant, you're saying that's just as bad as that shit that you stick in a needle and cook it up on a spoon and fucking shoot it in your veins? That doesn't seem right. There's something about that just doesn't really sound particularly believable. And when you fucking lie to kids and you're the fucking cops, you just broke the trust with everybody in that town, because they went through the program, they seen what you tried to teach them, and then they found out on their own, or they already knew, so they just watched you lie your ass off right in front of them. I'm not going to throw Thaxter under the bus here. To be honest, Thaxter kind of handled this pretty good, so let's finish this out and see how this went. But all in all, man, this isn't the cop you're always going to get at the D.A.R.E guy. When sometimes the D.A.R.E guy comes there and he's like the guy I was talking about earlier, the hardline dick that's like, hey, smell this. Is this what your mom and dad's bedroom smells like when they go in there and shut the door? Because if it is, let me know. I mean, this is kind of, and maybe they're just the kind of cop that's like, yeah, weed's bad. We'll get you for weed just as bad as we'll get you for heroin. And I mean, that kind of message is that's pretty dicky, and it's full of bullshit. And kids see right through that shit. And then they don't trust you. And you're the cops. You represent the government. So then they don't trust the government. Guess what? I don't trust the government just based on this shit that they tried to shove down my throats about drugs. I wrote a report about drugs in 8th grade, 2 years after this D.A.R.E shit. And I learned about every drug that guy talked about. Because he didn't tell us about the drugs. He just told us that you could die from doing this, and you end up being in the alley, you know, sucking dick, basically, if you do that. It's the kind of shit that the drug education is. It's pretty graphic. And then you got the right-wingers that are like, oh, yeah, that's cool. That's cool that you're teaching my kids about drugs in a weird, authoritarian, totalitarian way, but don't teach them about sex education. What the fuck is wrong with these parents, man? Anyway, I believe drug education should be up to parents, but that's just me. I don't have kids, so I guess I'm kind of talking out my ass. Alright, Thaxter says, people get high. That's the reason people like to smoke, because they get a feeling of euphoria. That's what's reported to me. I don't smoke, he told the class, but there's also a bunch of other short-term effects. Alright, so that's fair. That's a fair thing to say. And the thing about it is you can say that without being negative about it and making the people that are doing it look like they're doing something bad. And still deliver a message to the kids that, hey, maybe it's not time to start doing this yet. You know, like, this is what adults do. That's why education is so important. Because if you have good legitimate reasons why you don't think kids should smoke weed, write them down on a piece of paper and then develop some talking points out of that. Don't just go up there and be like, yeah, this shit's bad and we'll fucking throw you in jail for it. It'll make you sick or something, you know. Adults do it because they have a stressful life and need to relax. Whatever. Go, you know, you're young, play with your friends. There's other things to do. And I guess it depends on the age group of kids that you're dealing with too. You have to develop your talking points to be able to relate more with them. You got to understand, man, it's hard to relate to kids these days if you're an older person. Because of things like this drug education bullshit. Kids just genuinely think adults are fucking idiots. You know? Like, adults will tell kids something and then they'll just look on their phone and Google something and they'll be like, you're completely full of shit, you know? So whatever, man. He pointed to a list on the screen. Alright, so now here we go. Difficulty concentrating, trouble problem solving, loss of coordination and motor skills. And you'll get bad grades, said a student named James. I have a little bit of a problem with this. It seems like you can deliver those talking points too, and with the caveat that, you know, this is something that happens when you first start experimenting with certain substances. All right. Now, when they do this drug education, they often do the same thing as they do with marijuana in government propaganda or the mainstream media when they're trying to throw salt at weed. They conflate the effects of weed to being drunk, like difficulty concentrating, trouble problem solving, loss of coordination and motor skills. These are all things that happen when you're drinking too much. I don't see that as being difficulty concentrating when you're on weed. Are you fucking kidding? The problem isn't that you have a problem concentrating. The problem is that you concentrate too much sometimes. It's what people say, like zoning out or whatever. Like, what? It's not difficult. It's difficult to actually be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't concentrate on this thing that's in front of me. Come on, man. Trouble problem solving? No, I don't really get you there, man. And loss of coordination and motor skills is totally not even weed. And getting bad grades, sorry, James, but I don't see that as a thing, because I went through a lot of school stoned, and I basically got all A's, so I don't know where this bad grades things come from. Very good, Thaxter said. You guys know Mrs. Wenzel's science class is no joke. If you're not paying attention, you're gonna miss out. That sounded like some shit right out of AIM, you know, what's that, whatever, some old Leave It to Beaver type shit. It was the exact kind of lesson that D.A.R.E has officially distanced itself from. The police-run program on drug abuse resistance education was seemingly everywhere in the 80s and 90s. Then multiple studies showed that it did nothing to stop kids from doing drugs. In the 2000s, states slashed it from their budgets. It revamped its curriculum to focus on drugs and more on smart decision-making. Still, it's a shadow of its former self. In Massachusetts, which once had 800 D.A.R.E officers, 140 remain, still too many, including the one now asking his students, who likes roller coasters? He clicked to a slide titled, What is Addiction? And here was the core of his job. Was he going to persuade the kids to never smoke weed? To just say no forever? Unlikely. But there was a far bigger drug problem outside these walls that he was hopeful, desperate really, to do something about. Prescription pills had started the problem. Then it was heroin and fentanyl and carfentanil, the opioids that killed 1,997 people in Massachusetts last year, some of them here in West Bridgewater. Overdoses had become an expected part of Thaxter's shifts as patrol officer. His colleagues had responded to one just the night before. In the next 48 hours, there would be 2 more. Thaxter nodded as he listened, saying, okay, and wow, and that is hard. His job was to ensure that none of these preteens would ever become like the someone they knew. They didn't actually think that they would be trying heroin anytime soon, but marijuana, maybe. If a kid's willing to try weed in 6th grade, Thaxter wondered, what would he be doing at 19 or 20? And the thing about it is because you put the weed in there with all these other bad things that you think are so bad that you don't want to see kids doing, like fentanyl and meth and crack and heroin, since you put it in there with them, now you're making it so that it doesn't diminish the weed down to the level of those other drugs. That's not how it works. The mystery lies with the other drugs, not weed. Weed is well documented. We know everything there fucking is to know about weed, except for the fact that the lies and propaganda coming through from the government and, you know, the people that want to keep it illegal or whatever, is kind of overpowers it to some degree. But that stuff isn't being consumed by these kids. These kids don't read ABC News articles on the internet. They don't subscribe to the Washington Post, or they don't watch CNN or any of the news channels that, when they talk about this situation or weed or the opioid crisis, whenever they talk about any of this, they're like your D.A.R.E officer. You know, they're doing the same kind of propaganda to put weed over there with the other ones and make it sound like if you're going to do weed, then it's going to be a gateway. So we still live in the middle of this propaganda thing, and the police officer, of course, is like, oh, he just looks at a kid and he's like, yeah, if that kid smokes weed right now, of course he's going to do heroin in a couple years. And that's the stupidest thing ever. And it's you guys are the one that are putting weed in with the other basket. And by keeping it illegal, it's at the same place where you go buy weed, you can get the other stuff. It's called the black market. Maybe you've heard of it. Trump was just talking about it the other day when he was talking about guns and drugs, and if you make things prohibited, then the black market will still sell them. Yeah, exactly. So is that the justification to not have gun laws? Why isn't the justification for weed laws? That doesn't make any sense. To like know that the black market can be eliminated by taxing and regulating shit. But we're just gonna just act like that's cool. We can live with the black market. All right, make up your mind. Drugs have touched all of us. Everybody here could have probably raised a hand, he said. Now every police cruiser and fire truck in town is equipped with Narcan. Soon it will be at all schools. That's how the drug epidemic feels in West Bridgewater, population 7,000. It isn't junkies on the side of the road or skyrocketing crime, but if you know where to look, it's everywhere. It almost looks like we're at war, he says. I don't even remember seeing so many obituaries for people in their 20s. The picture, you can tell they're totally healthy and vibrant. And then it will say, died suddenly at home. I don't know if you noticed, Thaxter, but we are at war. We're like bombing 8 countries right now. We got permanent troops now in Syria. We just built a new base in Africa not too long ago to fly more drones over the Middle East. Everything's getting ramped up everywhere. We're still in Afghanistan. We're kind of still in Iraq. So, you know, we are at war. And those people that keep coming back blown to pieces, but they're still alive somehow, or their mind has been blown to pieces by all the fucking psychotic shit they seen and did. Yeah, they need marijuana too, man. They're coming back here and they're getting denied medical marijuana, and they're getting pipelined right into the opioids and the Xanaxes and the whatever else, Lexapros or whatever else. I don't even know what all the meds that they give people with PTS. So sometimes Thaxter calls his 21 and 26-year-old sons who live in New York and California. Quote, someone from your class, he'll tell them. School Superintendent Patty Oakley, 99% of the time, they were successful kids in school and had a bright future, Oakley says. It's pretty sad, man. Now her schools are filled with people trying to make sure that others don't end up in that place. The teachers who know to look out for parents who might be high when they pick up their kids. Aha. The teachers who will look for parents that might be high. I mean, this is because, like Thaxter just said earlier, you know, when you're driving around parked cars in the mall or whatever, sometimes if you see like the window cracked and shit, you got to look in there to make sure there ain't somebody that OD'd in there, because if you didn't see them, they might end up dying. The counselors who listen to students say, quote, my dad was in the bathroom for a long time and then the police came, or the hardest thing to hear, quote, my mom says if I talk to you, they're going to take me away from her. And that's another thing I thought of with the rebringing back of D.A.R.E. and the Jeff Sessions with the drug war of the 80s coming back in many ways, because that's just the kind of guy he is. One of the things that the D.A.R.E. program did, like I said, was they basically got kids to narc on their own parents. And that's what that kid just said, right? My mom says if I talk to you, they're going to take me away from her. Like, yeah, you know, is your mom addicted to opioids? Does your mom have to use needles and stuff? Is there needles laying around the house? Now, these are all legitimate concerns. Don't get me wrong. I am totally with you. But is this really how we handle this situation? As we have it so criminalized, addicts are so criminalized that we're having their own kids narc them out, and instead of helping the parents, you know what's going to happen. The kid's going to be removed from the house, Child Protective Services, put into foster care, and the parents are going to be going to prison after they come out of rehab or whatever happens. They're going to jail that day. And for reckless endangerment, if the police want to bring the charges up to that level, they might be looking at not getting the kids back. So that's what's going on. There's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way. Now you've ruined not only that kid's life, but I don't think the parents are going to do very good at recovering from the drug problem. Having lost kids and all this shit, you just destroyed their whole life, besides the fact that they're already destroying it. But I mean, I'm just saying, man, like, there's got to be a different way to handle this. Here's a little flashback of D.A.R.E. Quote, "You want to blame something, blame MTV." The president of Massachusetts D.A.R.E. told a Boston Herald reporter in 1997. What? Blame MTV. See, back then, the country's right wing was way more, shall we say, upfront about being evangelical Christians. Like, I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, the shit that they were playing on mainstream TV, like on 60 Minutes and 2020 and John Stossel and shit like that. They were doing features about how the music was satanic and the music was sending messages to the kids with, you know, backmasking and other kinds of subversive messaging. And it was kind of sexy to you know, intriguing to say the least, but it was all bullshit, and it's all the right wing trying to just like, hey, we're scared of every damn thing that looks different than us, so we're going to talk about it. The country was in the middle of a contentious debate over its best-known drug reduction effort. Study after public health study had concluded that D.A.R.E. did not decrease drug use among students and may have even increased it. Politicians and police argued that the program's benefits, such as familiarizing students with law enforcement, couldn't be quantified. Yeah, they get pretty familiar with law enforcement, all right. And when the cops take the kids and separate them from the parents after the drug bust, the kids will have this ill feeling towards cops for the rest of their life, man. By 2002, Massachusetts had estimated $4.3 million in funding for the program. Nationally, the program scrambled to fix itself. The curriculum was overhauled. D.A.R.E.'s mascot, Darren the Lion, chosen in the 90s when the Lion King was really popular, stayed the same, but what he preached changed. By 2010, D.A.R.E. had taken the words drugs out of its mission statement. The program's goal is now to teach students good decision-making skills to help them lead safe and healthy lives. That's, you know, it's cool that that's your mission statement. I really wish you would have done that, though, because they still do the same scare tactics, basically intimidation. Like, hey, these are the drugs. They're either going to kill you or we're going to arrest you. Like, there's no way out. If you get into drugs, you're going to go to jail, and we're going to make an example of you, and your parents are going to disown you. And, oh, by the way, do your parents do drugs? Because then we're going to go arrest them and put you in foster care and take your parents away forever. Last summer when D.A.R.E. leaders met in Texas, their highest profile speaker was fonder of what the program used to be. Quote, D.A.R.E.'s best remembered anti-drug program, Attorney General Jeff Sessions told the officers, "Your D.A.R.E. team is ready to meet this next challenge. Just like you did in the 80s and 90s. Man, this guy is just stuck in the 80s, dude. Jeff Sessions is more 80s than fucking Pac-Man, and like if Pac-Man and Donkey Kong had a baby. and it looked like Qbert. Like, that wouldn't even be 1/10 as 80s as Jeff Sessions, even if it had a mullet. You know, Dominic DeNatale, the current head of Massachusetts D.A.R.E, heard about that speech but didn't watch it or read it. In the past year, his state has been working to introduce marijuana retail sales and combat the opioid epidemic all at once. Some districts that had eliminated the D.A.R.E programs contacted him asking what it would take to get it back. With no state funding, he answers, it frequently requires local police department, which may already be low on resources, to be willing to forego a patrol officer. It requires principals who are under pressure to get students to pass standardized tests to give up teaching time. Because don't you know, that's all that public schools have time to do if they want to get their federal funding every year, because of like all the right-wing things like 1,000 points of lights and all this other shit that, you know, No Child Left Behind. Over the last few decades, man, the Republicans have made it so if your students are getting bad grades, your teachers can't change it, then you guys aren't getting as much funding and schools are going broke, and it's just a big mess. So the glory days of D.A.R.E, it seemed to Denali were long gone. The program's success would come down to the D.A.R.E officers who were left. And you know what? I think they should just get rid of this shit. Of course I think they should just get rid of this shit altogether, man. It's just ridiculous to assume that this is anything but a front for cops to make arrests or profile people in schools or whatever, man. And in case you missed my clip I made about it, the case where the patients are suing Jeff Sessions. Most of these patients are medical marijuana refugees. One of them is the 12-year-old girl, Alexis Bortell. And another one of these defendants, plaintiffs, they feel like defendants. We'll say that. We'll give them that. But another one is Koch. I hope I'm saying that right. I post about him sometimes. We will win this case, Jaeger. All my sites are dedicated to Rare Diseases Day today. Love you all. And that was on the 28th. So just thought I'd share that. And remember, she's staying positive about this whole judge dismissing the case thing. And it was to be expected that this judge was going to do that. And it's just a bump in the road on the way to the Supreme Court, man. So Trump was talking about some shit about guns, and you know, I mentioned it earlier. So what did he say? Let's check it out. Did Trump just argue for drug legalization again? And leave it to Tom Angel to put together this story out of this, because I was thinking about it, like, how can you frame this? It sounds like he just said we should legalize drugs because the black market's going to be there no matter what. Maybe, when I first heard the quote. So Tom put it together. Good job, Tom. Can't credit people enough that do the actual putting the stories together, because they get plagiarized all the time. I'm getting, I've never gotten no complaints from anybody, and I'm sure I'm pretty visible. Like, I'm on Twitter like a plague. I sent Tom a few messages from time to time to thank him for what he does, and I've blurbed his Patreon. There it is. So if you want to help Tom Angel out with all the great work he's done over the years, and especially since he started Marijuana Moment. And if you've never been to Marijuana Moment, take a Marijuana Moment. Go light up one and go over there and check it out. It's basically your one-stop shop for all your marijuana information. I don't want to send too many people over there, because then you might not come back here and ever watch my videos because you'll be too busy reading all the stories yourself. But anyway, all jokes aside, Marijuana Moment, great site. One stop and you're there. He's got perks in the Patreon. If you're really wonky, he's tracking over 500 marijuana bills right now. Legislation to legalize marijuana in some way, shape, or form. Or just to add to the laws that are already there or whatever. So let's check out this crap that Trump is talking about. Because I don't know, Trump's pretty wishy-washy. It's really hard for me to really believe that he has a mind of his own. He just has a really big ego. And whenever he's talking to people, it just seems like he's just like going along with it. And whatever it's left up to him to do the driving the bus part, he just seems to fucking flub it every time. I mean, just ridiculously. And here's another example. President Trump, in a meeting about gun policy, seemed to voice arguments that are commonly used by people advocating for drug legalization. And, man, I don't know about you, but I know some right-wing people, and they were not happy at all about this stuff here. They were like, whoa. And the whole thing where he was talking about the due process, like, let's take the guns first and then do the due process later. Due process means you do the due process when it's due, which is before you take the guns. So if Obama said something like that, you would have never heard the end of it from like Fox News or any kind of right-wing pundit. That would have been the absolute nail in Obama's coffin if he would have said, oh, we don't need no due process to take some gun from somebody. If we think you're crazy, we'll just take your gun. We'll just do some due process later, buddy. Oh my God, you would have never heard the fucking end of that. Would you have? I don't think so. You would have. They'd still be talking about it right now. Of course, the Republicans would have fucking impeached his ass over it, but whatever. Anyway, the problem is you have a real black market. They don't worry about anything. They don't worry about anything you're saying. They sell a gun, and the buyer don't care, and the seller. That's one of the problems we are all going to have, he said on Wednesday, surrounded by members of Congress from both parties. And then that's another statement a lot of people had a problem with, is they took this as him saying that we're going to make some guns illegal. Because of this last part here where he's like, that's one of the problems we're all going to have. What are you talking about, man? You taking some guns away? And the black market's going to still sell them? And you have that problem with drugs. You make the drugs illegal and they come. You've never had a problem like that. We're fighting it hard, but you've never had a problem like this, he continued. So you have the same problem with guns. The funny part is there's already guns in the black market, but the black market has a really good network because of weed. Because of weed, pretty much everything illegal can move along the veins of the black market and get anywhere it needs to be. So if you wanted to get an AR-15, even if they made them illegal as hell, you could still get it. That's one of the arguments that right-wingers always make about gun laws and whatnot, and I totally agree with that. There's no way you're going to get rid of AR-15s by making laws. I mean, people, whether they're law-abiding citizens or not, will become non-law-abiding citizens in a heartbeat if they actually want to have an AR-15. Activists campaigning against drug prohibition often argue that making drugs illegal prevents very few people from consuming them, and that they purchase their desired substances in an unregulated criminal market where cartels and gangs make the rules. By explicitly invoking drugs in the debate about gun policy, in which some Democrats and others are pushing to ban certain categories of weapons, the president appears to be saying that prohibition just doesn't work, whether it comes to guns, drugs, or whatever. Hey, can we legalize all the shit you guys try to prohibit, which is stupid as hell? Or maybe he's just confused. I didn't even know there was a video, but let's check it out.
John, the problem is you have a real black market. They don't worry about anything. They don't worry about anything that you're saying.
That's right. But
they sell a gun, and the buyer doesn't care, and the seller, and that's one of the problems we all are going to have. And you have that problem with drugs. You make the drugs illegal, and they come, well, you've never had a problem like this. We're fighting it hard.
Look at Dianne Feinstein.
So you have the same
She's
problem
freaking
with
out.
guns. You have a lot of great people go out and register and do all sorts of things.
She's like,
you have
dude,
a black
be
market
quiet.
where they don't even think about registering, or they're not going to be looking at Joe and Pat's bill. They couldn't care less about it. And we have to be very strong on that. I think you can have provisions on that too. Big penalties, strong penalties. John, you got to finish up.
Well, I was just going to say,
Wow, that kind of sounded weird. It sounded like he's not only saying that he's for this prohibition of guns, but strong penalties are the only way you're going to make it happen. Let's check this guy out one more time. Here, let me turn the quality up a little bit. Yeah, we're good. All right.
You've never had a problem like this. We're fighting it hard, but you've never had a problem like this. So you have the same problem with guns. You have a lot of great people go out and register and do all sorts of things, but you have a black market where they don't even think about registering, or they're not going to be looking at Joe and Pat's bill. They couldn't care less about it. And we have to be very strong on that. I think you can have provisions on that too. Big penalties, strong penalties. John, you got to finish up.
Well, I was just going to say, the purchaser's permit allows law enforcement to then go into that black market and buy and sell guns and make arrests of the folks who are in there doing it illegally.
We've got to be very tough on the black market.
Exactly.
Hi, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you.
I represent.
So you're already tough on the black market. That's not a thing. And penalties are already stiff. If you're out there selling illegal guns or drugs, the penalties are the stiffest. And I've never really heard of somebody getting busted with a truck full of guns that wasn't selling drugs too. So basically, when people get put in jail so bad for fucking weed even, there's a guy named Hugh Yan. Hugh, if you're watching this, what's up, buddy? Howdy. He wrote a book while he was in prison called I Should Have Robbed a Bank. Because while he was sitting there for a fucking weed smuggling sentence, he was watching bank robbers come and go 2-3 times. So yeah, don't worry about the black market. You're already cracking down pretty fucking hard on it, bro. So yeah, that was some pretty ominous stuff coming out of Trump, but like anything that comes out of Trump's mouth, you can't even believe it. There was people while he was saying it that were like, yo, shut up, dude. What the fuck are you doing? You're spilling the beans. So what he was saying was actually all true. You know, it was all completely honest and true. And that's what politicians hate. Even Dianne Feinstein, who's sitting right next to him, and Marco Rubio sitting next to her on the right, looked nervous as hell. They looked shook. They were like, whoa, dude, I can't believe he's saying all this shit. Dude, you can't be saying shit like that. That's real truth and shit. We don't work in real truth around here. So yeah, that was pretty brazen. I mean, I kind of like everything that just happened right there, to be honest. Even though, yeah, I'm not like, oh yeah, that was totally cool of him to throw guns and drugs in the same boat and like, hey, do something about this prohibition or no. Because they're not the same thing. All right, drugs may kill people or whatever, and so can guns or whatever, but it's just like two different, you're talking about two totally separate things. All right, they're in the black market together. The black market's what you're really talking about, and the way to get rid of that isn't to make more things illegal and to make more enforcement on shit and make more penalties on shit that already is illegal and has stiff penalties. That's not gonna fucking deter shit. You don't ban more shit. It's not how prohibition goes away. Prohibition goes away by making shit regulated and legal. So with guns, I agree that we need some kind of regulation with the fucking things. If nothing else, a registration process would be okay. And if you want to register some firearms, you gotta like not be a psycho with a fucking record of violent shit. You know, like 39 times a cop came to your house for fucking violent shit. Neighbors talking about, yeah, this dude walks around with guns and shit. Well, whatever, I'm getting sidetracked. Sorry. But in 1990, Trump did say, quote, "We're losing badly the war on drugs. You have to legalize drugs to win that war," he said at the time. "You have to take the profit away from these drug czars. What I like to do, maybe by bringing it up, is cause enough controversy that you get into a dialogue of the issue of drugs so people will start to realize that this is the only answer. There is no other answer. So maybe, even though people are twisting his arm and pushing him around and telling him what to do and what to say, he still conflated the drugs with the gun thing just to criticize prohibition and stick in the vein of the 1990 Trump. We can only hope. But that doesn't really sound like the case, because recently He's talking about killing drug dealers and Trump. He's a funny one. He's very inconsistent. So not too long ago, I did a clip about, you know, there was like some propaganda study out there talking about how on 420 there seems to be more wrecks than normal. Must be because of all the 420 parties. Well, you know, that's such bullshit. I can't even fucking begin to tell you how stupid that kind of correlation shit is. But that, you know, they always do that. They push those correlative studies out there and act like it's golden. We don't get those, though. If you want to, like, legalize weed because you can say that it's safe or that it's not as addictive as things that are legal even, you don't get to do that. Well, here we have an update on that front. Here's how many people died, got hospitalized, or arrested at the world's biggest cannabis festival, the Emerald Cup 2017. According to Green State Public Safety Review of the 2017 Emerald Cup, there were 0 deaths. This Emerald Cup, by the way, is held on December 9th and 10th. So there were 0 deaths, 0 hospitalizations, 0 arrests at the 2-day-long 25,000 person event where hundreds of pounds of cannabis flowers, edibles, and extracts were consumed. That stands in stark contrast of the average National Football League game in America, where there is an average of 6 arrests per game, that the Washington Post reported. The worst offenders were the San Diego Chargers fans, 24 average arrests per game. And Raiders fans, 17 average arrests per game. Any event that draws big crowds is going to experience some minor issues, but according to interviews with Cup organizer Tim Blake, the Santa Rosa Police Department, the management of Sonoma County Fairgrounds, the California Highway Patrol, the latest Emerald Cup, which drew more people per day than ever, went off without any major problems. There were no arrests directly related to the event, and nobody was taken to the hospital. That's despite the fact that the entire place smelled of cannabis for 2 days and tens of thousands of adults consumed the botanical. There's some attendees. They're pretty mellow. Big shocker, right? Look at this giant hanger. That's pretty cool. They're all just sitting there chilling. I don't know what's going on. People are mostly really into learning and checking things out. Another surprise. You know, you go to, like, even beer fests are a little bit rowdy, but a lot of festivals just aren't like people walking around asking questions and looking at stuff and trying to learn shit. That's what they do at these cannabis festivals, man. One big concern watchers of legalization have is the potential for people to consume cannabis and then drive unsafely. Are cannabis events as dangerous, more dangerous, or less dangerous than alcohol-driven events like beer fests or wine country attractions like wineries or NFL games? According to the California Highway Patrol Santa Rosa area office, which provides services to Sonoma County, 0 Emerald Cup-related enforcement actions proved noteworthy enough to tweet or post to Facebook. Lieutenant Jonathan Sloat, CHP Public Information Officer, Santa Rosa area, said there was 1 DUI arrest for suspected alcohol and marijuana intoxication during the December 9th through 10th weekend, but he doesn't think it was related to the cup. So there you have it, man. Is it safe to drive on 420? Most definitely. Quote, I haven't heard of too many issues or problems coming out of that event over the years, he said. The world's biggest hash appreciation festival, Chalice Festival, held each year in San Bernardino County Fairgrounds, has also been problem-free, according to the Victorville Daily Press. Despite our initial reservation about them, to date, none of the festivals have resulted in increased crime in the area, according to the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department officials. For now, though, legal cannabis events in California have been tightly restricted Under state law, they can be held only on county fairgrounds. A new bill introduced in the legislature by Assemblyman Bill Quirk, Democrat from Hayward, would loosen that restriction to allow cannabis events to be held in more locations so long as they're approved by local government. And I can vouch for the Hash Bash and the Cannabis Cup in Michigan. Both parties go off without any problems, and over the years I've always kept tabs on the arrests in Ann Arbor at the Hash Bash in Ann Arbor, and almost every time they're either related to alcohol, fights, or both. So one of the things I was talking about earlier was how I like to credit the writers and the publications. You know, we read things from the Cannabis, 420 magazine, Tom Angel, and other writers at Forbes, Rolling Stone, and of course whatever mainstream sources happen to publish stuff that I read. But you know, for the main part, well, not like anything I just said wasn't mainstream, but basically we got this thing from Rolling Stone here, and I don't understand what they're talking about, but it looks like what I'm doing right here might even be against their policy. I don't know. Well, the thing about it is I'm not gonna ask for money on this video. I'm not gonna advertise on it. I'm not gonna go out there and say that this Rolling Stone article, I'm not gonna use it as like, hey, come and watch my video because of this. So I don't know. If they figure out that I read this and say something to me, we'll deal with it when it happens. But right here, it basically saying, hey, you can't read this on your vlog or your blog or any of this other shit. I can't copy it in part or in whole, or you can go there and figure it out yourself if you want. I'm not going to link that in the description. Sorry about that. But anyway, so it's a pretty important story. Sorry, Jeff Sessions. Governors are moving ahead with pot. The governors had their annual meeting. Pro-cannabis governors say the AG isn't stopping them from advancing plans for medical and recreational legalization. And just to make sure we give credit where credit's due, this is written by Matt Laszlo over here at Rolling Stone. Thank you, Matt, for your intrepid reporting. And believe me, it is. He actually attended and talked to these governors. I'm pretty sure, so let's check it out. Over the past few days, most of the nation's governors descended on Washington for their annual meeting with the administration officials and the president. As governors mingled about and chatted in between sessions, many of them were exchanging ideas and best practices on how to roll out a successful regulatory regime on marijuana. But hanging over their talks was the specter of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who would like to clamp down on the nation's burgeoning, though disparate, marijuana industry. Some Democratic governors say they were denied a private meeting with Sessions to discuss his anti-marijuana stance. And besides attending the formal governor's ball on Sunday night, the Attorney General only made one appearance to the group at a White House briefing on opioids. Some say they're frustrated they can't pick his brain on his controversial move to rescind the Obama-era memo that directed the nation's top prosecutors to prioritize other offenses over marijuana in states where it's legal. Quote, I tried, but I couldn't get called on, Governor Hickenlooper tells Rolling Stone. He only took about 6 questions. There are probably about 40 governors in the room. Even though there's fear that Sessions wants to go after legal marijuana business owners, many states are moving ahead with efforts to either launch a new medicinal marijuana industry, expanding an existing one, or to legalize weed for recreational purposes. And the governors say so far Sessions' opposition hasn't had an impact on the ground. Quote, it has not impacted us, and we believe it will not. Although that doesn't mean we're not paying attention, Governor Phil Murphy, Democrat from New Jersey, tells Rolling Stone. The nation's other newly seated governor, Ralph Northam, Democrat from Virginia, also campaigned on marijuana. He faces more headwinds from Republicans who control his state's House of Delegates, but he's still calling for marijuana decriminalization. Quote, I think it would be great if at the federal level they could change the schedule of marijuana so that we can get more data on it, do more research, Northam tells Rolling Stone. Quote, I remind people all the time that probably over 100 medicines that we use routinely in healthcare come from plants. Oh, it's more than that, my friend. So let's be a little bit more open-minded and look at the potential uses for medical marijuana. Many other states are also expanding their medical marijuana operations. Hawaii just authorized medical marijuana dispensaries that will soon be on each of its 8 islands. Quote, we obviously are concerned about that and what actions he'll be taking, Governor David Ige, Democrat from Hawaii, tells Rolling Stone. Rhode Island, which legalized medical use in 2006, currently only has 3 marijuana medical dispensaries in the entire state, said Democratic Governor Gina Raimondo. Gina has a proposal in front of her legislator to double or triple that number, but she says it's all more complicated because of opposition from Sessions and because the federal prohibition on weed has severely limited the amount of research on the plant. Quote, that is the challenge, Raimondo tells Rolling Stones. Frankly, that is a challenge for states thinking about legalizing recreational marijuana. In June, Oklahoma voters, which tend to skew ultra-conservative, will decide whether they want to allow medical marijuana, and that has the governor's office watching Sessions. Quote, it's something that we're weighing with our Attorney General to see what the U.S. Attorney General is doing too, Governor Mary Fallon, Republican, Oklahoma, tells Rolling Stone. Quote, but we do think that if it's implemented, there are some guidelines as far as licensing and how it's regulated in the state of Oklahoma that will have to be addressed by our legislator. While Sessions is seen as a boogeyman by marijuana activists, he has his defenders. He's come under fire for rescinding former Attorney General Eric Holder's memo that sought to protect legal marijuana businesses, but Governor Gary Herbert, Republican from Utah, says Holder is the one who deserves the blame for not working with Congress on a federal resolution. He did as much as he could. He couldn't just jump all the way in. Now the Attorney General's going the other way. So whatever, dude. Sure, they could have worked a little bit more towards that end, but I think it would have took more than Eric Holder to do it. So they turned a blind eye to it. They just let states do it in open violation of the federal law. That's not how we do things in this country. I think that's bad process. It's a bad form and it sends a bad message. Whatever, man. By the way, all these people that always criticize the quicker ways that we try to get things done in the government, hey, dipshit, it's because we've already exhausted the normal methods that you're supposed to do to go through to get any kind of reform on anything. You know, literally, like we wrote our congressmen. We've sent congressmen there that just want to legalize marijuana as their only fucking platform. And it just gets shut down and gets buried. No one wants to do it. Or they pass the buck and do the old circle jerk, wild goose chase shit. This fall, Utah voters will get to weigh in on whether they want to expand the state's extremely limited medical marijuana industry. In the meantime, Herbert is also calling on lawmakers on Capitol Hill to reschedule marijuana now so his voters can have access to better data on its potential health benefits and or harms. He thinks it should be treated more like the prescriptions in your cabinet than beers in your fridge. It ought to be controlled substance just like anything else. It ought to be approved by the FDA. It ought to be, in fact, prescribed by a doctor and administered by pharmacists, Herbert continues. We probably ought not to have self-medication. The physiology of different people would require probably different quantities of the medicine, and I think that's prudent. Well, gee, I'm so glad you decided to think you know something there, buddy. Why don't you actually read and learn and maybe fucking experiment with medical marijuana yourself? I'm so sick of these people that just want to act like they can apply their whatever knowledge they have to the marijuana or medical marijuana, whatever, man. There's this body of knowledge that is there. We already know. I mean, educate yourself, man. Why is all these people that are in positions of power, whether it's politicians or doctors or whatever, you know, they're always like, oh, I know everything about marijuana. No, you fucking don't, and you don't want to learn anything about it, and it's really frustrating. Governor Dan Malloy, Democrat from Connecticut, says it's just a matter of time before it happens in Connecticut because efforts to legalize weed are sweeping the entire Northeast corridor. Boy, talk about taking the fucking initiative. What the fuck? Come on, dude. In Connecticut, it's probably like 80% of the people want to legalize that shit. Are you kidding? Quote, as Canada moves in that direction, as Massachusetts and Vermont, it's going to be a neighborhood thing, and I understand that. Wow, that is clearly somebody who's trying to stall it and stonewall it and do all this shit to make it so it don't happen. We see you, Malloy. Man, if he's not up for re-election, maybe do something, recall, because this sounds like some right-wing shit to say. While he remains lukewarm on recreational, he did pen a blunt letter to Sessions on it. Quote, I told him to stop messing around with marijuana because it really isn't important. Quote, I have not taken the opportunity to endorse marijuana, but that's very different than spending resources trying to combat marijuana use. And quite frankly, if you're going to be serious about opioids, you can't be screwing around with marijuana. So he can say those statements because Connecticut has decriminalized like a certain amount of cannabis. I think it's like an ounce, maybe 30 grams or whatever, an ounce. So, you know, but it's still, the decriminalization is not, it's not good enough. Yeah, you tell him, Johnny, it's not good enough. And furthermore, it still leaves the black market. That's where you're going to find, you know, the crime is in the black market. Ain't that something? Wasn't the black market the whole like topic of conversation? That's the real bad thing that you guys are trying to get rid of, not the drugs themselves. While many governors are now rushing out the new marijuana regulations, they're still keeping an eye on Sessions. Governor Jay Inslee, Democrat from Washington, says during his visit he was rebuffed when asked for a private meeting with the Attorney General to discuss the state's recreational marijuana marketplace, but he says his offer for Sessions to come out west and tour his state's pot businesses still stands. It's a shame that he has a closed mind and he's much more attentive to his old ideology than to new facts, Inslee tells Rolling Stone. The fears that he might have had 30 years ago have not been realized, and we wish he would just open his eyes to the reality of the situation. Like, I don't know if did he ever illustrate the reason why he thought marijuana was so bad 30 years ago? I mean, I remember the rhetoric Ronald Reagan was pushing. Reagan was like, oh, marijuana, it's probably the most dangerous drug there ever was. I don't know how you get there, but okay, like maybe that's what Sessions, his logic. If he did, I think he would no longer try to fight an old battle that the community and the nation is moving very rapidly forward on. And yeah, sorry, Sessions, but geez, could you please just fuck off? I'm so sick of doing stories about your old, decrepit logic and stupid ignorance. The ignorance that Sessions has is second to none, and it's forced. It's forced upon himself, and he refuses to let anything penetrate it. Now it seems like his position of Attorney General is basically just being propped up like, oh, Sessions, you were here, this is your reward for such a great career, you deserve to be the Attorney General. And it's disgusting. I don't see that. Name one fucking thing that Sessions has done that's worth a shit in the description below. Thank you very much. I would really like to know that. And don't say, oh, he busted all the Pizzagate people, because he didn't. The pedophile rings that have been broken up since Sessions came into power were already under investigation for many years. In some cases, decades. So who knows why that took so long to make the busts finally, because there's a lot of corruption in this shit. But Sessions is not getting my credit yet for anything. Not a damn thing. Listen, Colorado governor says DOJ wants to sow doubt on marijuana. And we're not going to listen to it. Because I didn't find out where it was in there that he said anything interesting. But we'll pull a couple quotes. Attorney General Jeff Sessions' tough stance on legalized marijuana could lead to a federal closure of some facilities in states where it's legal. Governor from Colorado, John Hickenlooper, Democrat, predicts in a new interview. And I also made that prediction based on him saying a lot of ominous things over the last few days. This kind of just makes me feel like he knows something we don't know. So, quote, he does not think in any way that it's a good thing for this country to have legal marijuana. So when he rattles his saber, I wouldn't be surprised if he closes down one or two of these facilities just to make that statement, Hickenlooper told the Hill's Power Politics podcast. Quote, hopefully in the not too distant future, Congress will step in and say, okay, we're going to allow the states to pursue these experiments and we're going to let them have banking so it's not all done in cash. And you're putting people's lives at risk, and we're going to have better tests. Someone's going to figure out a breathalyzer for marijuana. Don't hold your breath on that, dude. They've been trying for like 20 years that I know of. After talking with the Attorney General, Hickenlooper says he believes the Justice Department wants to slow doubt through the federal action as a way to deter the marijuana trend nationwide. The sowing of doubt is going to be a bust of something major that was clearly operating under the auspices of the state regulations, as in they were doing everything according to the book in a state like Colorado or California or something, but they still get raided by the feds, just to let you know that the feds do have the power to do that. And that's going to not just sow the doubt, but make it so people that are thinking about investing in companies might not do that, and companies might not be willing to risk some of their capital, and it's going to drive a lot of shit underground, man, quite frankly. Quote, there's no predictability now in the marijuana business, Hickenlooper said during a discussion on the sideline of the annual National Governors Association conference in Washington this week. I tell people to wait another year or two. When people are asking him, hey, should I start up a marijuana in my state? The Colorado governor said that to date, research in his state has not shown an increase in marijuana use by teenagers nor a surge in people's driving while high, something that critics of the measure warned could happen when voters weighed legalization in 2012. It's also two of the litmus tests that the Department of Justice was going by, that if these things remained within reason, then we're not going to come kicking doors in. As long we'll just trust that you guys have your own regulations under control, because you do actually have police officers and detectives and shit. One consequence, he said, is that many former black market vendors have emerged from the shadows. Quote, now look at all those people who are involved in the marijuana business and are paying taxes. They're not breaking the law, Hickenlooper said. So that's just a few quotes from one of the governors that was at this governor's thing, and Sessions kind of addressed him, but he didn't address him because this is a big fucking deal. It's a really big deal. So these governors are like, well, he didn't say anything to us and we had questions, so whatever, dude. Meanwhile, here's a bipartisan effort that looks like shit. So we got Grassley, Feinstein, Klobuchar, Kennedy, and White House all writing Google and other tech companies, urging them to take steps like disabling the ability to search for illicit drugs through your platform. Well, isn't this nice? So, like I keep saying, guys, any fucking day, this channel could just disappear because somebody don't like what I'm doing, because somebody might have heard one of my videos and they think that I'm trying to promote driving while stoned or kids smoking weed or any number of fucking bullshit things that they could say I'm doing just by expressing opinions that maybe they don't like. Maybe my opinion is a little bit radical to some people. I don't believe it is. I just believe that if you look at the history of cannabis and especially know how that it was completely accepted and part of society and everybody had a bottle of fucking cannabis in their fucking in their cupboard, it went from that to being demonized as the most dangerous drug and most addictive and made you do all kinds of crazy shit. And over the 80 plus years of prohibition of it, we've gotten to this point where we're still in this situation where people have a really bad opinion about marijuana and they don't like what I'm doing, quite frankly. Now, what else is dangerous about this thing that they're doing here with the disabling the ability to search for illicit drugs through your platform? If this is Google, well then, people that are trying to find out about drugs and learn about them because they keep getting lied to by the D.A.R.E guy that comes to the fucking school and lies to them about it, or they keep getting lied to on mainstream media, telling them one thing when they see something completely different right before their eyes. So overall, yeah, they know that the government and the news are full of shit when it comes to drugs, so they're looking for their own information. You could have people that are looking for interactions. People search, they look at pills that they find and they use drug.com to search for what that pill is. People look to see, what drugs actually do so that if they're experimenting with them, they at least have a safe dose recommendation. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why this could be bad, obviously. And there's a lot of reasons why people should look at these senators when they're going to the polls and decide, maybe I shouldn't fucking just go ahead and give these guys a pass. Maybe they're not really representing the people, especially Dianne Feinstein. I mean, the lady's 84 years old. I mean, I'm not trying to be like age discriminator or anything, but I am saying, do you think you can still be in touch with what's going on out there in the world if you're a sheltered 84-year-old senator that's been in the Senate since the 1960s? It doesn't make much fucking sense, man. Whatever political shit was going on back in the heyday of the 60s, ain't shit going on now, man. It's all different. And people like that still exist are there because they fucking are corrupt and they're gerrymandered and they're fucking funded by the same corporations that want to fucking crush us. So, yeah. Grassley, Feinstein, Klobuchar, Kennedy, that's John Kennedy, and Sheldon Whitehouse. You can all pack your bags and you can all clear out your office. We're going to be the last people on the planet to actually legalize marijuana. In fact, even the U.S. territories could legalize before the mainland. Marijuana is now legal in 9 states, and 2 U.S. territories could soon join them in ending prohibition. Guam, Governor Eddie Calvo, Republican, or whatever the R means in Guam, included, quote, legalizing the use and sale of recreational marijuana in a list of revenue enhancements he sent to lawmakers for consideration on Monday. Lawmakers in the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, CNMI, are holding a series of hearings on marijuana legalization bill this week. Advocates expect they will decide whether to end cannabis prohibition or refer a ballot question to votes in the coming days. If one or both of the remote Pacific territories ends cannabis prohibition, it would mark the start of the next phase of the legalization movement, bringing its reach to a new part of the globe. In Guam, Calvo placed marijuana legalization legislation before lawmakers last year, but later rescinded support for his own plan in light of concerning signals from the Trump administration. But now, even though the U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has since removed earlier protections for state marijuana laws, Calvo appeared to have changed his mind again. His current push for legalization appears to come out of a concern for that the tax reform plan recently passed by congressional Republicans and signed into law by President Trump could impact his territory's revenues. As a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, Legislaturen Guhan, with assistance from the Office of Finance and Budget, shall collaborate with Gahan to determine feasibility and implementation of the following items, Calvo wrote in a fiscal alignment plan he sent to lawmakers. Marijuana legalization is listed along with 15 other proposals, such as increasing alcohol and tobacco taxes, implementing rental car surcharges, and adding a sales tax. It could be treated like alcohol and tobacco, and it could be taxed, Calvo said in a radio appearance last week. I'm one that may not philosophically believe in legalization, but it's about providing a stable government and stable community. Philosophically, what philosophically is there to not believe in when it comes to legalization? That's what I don't understand here, man. What in your philosophy makes it so marijuana legalization is a bad thing? All it is it's going to be there no matter what. How much more proof do you need of that? You're in Guam, in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of an ocean where no one can see you for millions of miles, and you're like, yeah, man, I'm just not philosophically into this legalization thing. We should throw people in jail for using plants as medicine to get high. Now, this is just fucking ridiculous. What in God's green earth is wrong with marijuana legalization, philosophically speaking? I can't wrap my head around what is right about it philosophically, like just throwing someone in jail for using marijuana. It just doesn't fucking add up. Anyway, in NMI, the Senate Judiciary, Government, and Law Committee has held a series of hearings in each of the territory's major islands about pending marijuana legalization bill. As originally introduced, the legislation, if enacted, would refer the question of legalization to voters in the form of a ballot measure, but concerns have been raised about constitutionality of that approach, and supporters are now considering amending the proposal to enact legalization solely through an act of lawmakers. I don't know the details of that, but like I always say, when lawmakers are the ones doing the legalizing, it ends up really being just a bunch of corrupt corporate bullshit. But I suppose it's better than the corrupt bullshit making it illegal. A hearing on the island of Saipan, scheduled for Tuesday, was postponed, lack of quorum. We held the public hearing on Rhoda last night, and other senators were not able to make back to Saipan for tonight's public hearing. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for those islands. So, the New York Times, if you got the print version of it, really over the top, the headline was, Pedestrian deaths rose in states where pot is legal, a study finds. I mean, it sounds to me like they were going in there and they were looking at every pot death or every road death where pedestrians are getting smoked out there, getting ran over. As if it was directly correlated to that. And again, this is just another example of where they can do this shit to scare you. But when we try to do this shit, they're like, no, you need real studies. You need a real study to even say that. Well, fuck you, anybody that said that to me ever about any of my talking points. Anything. Because I'm going on some hyperbole once in a while to combat shit like this. Are you fucking kidding me? You're telling me that people walking around on the street, pedestrians, are getting fucking ran over by people in cars, and they're dying, and that somebody's stoned in the equation, or maybe both people are. It's the way these fucking mainstream propagandists are always doing. I mean, it's like they look at something where someone already might make an implication like this, and then they just go full force and make it like, whoa, well, yeah, duh. So on the web version, they decided to tone it down a little. And the reason is because on the newsprint version, where you get a fucking big fat newspaper, New York Times, and the print rubs off on you. It's just a big mess. Like, who fucking does that anyway? Well, the thing is when you do open that up and you read this shit, pedestrian deaths rose in states where pot is legal, a study finds. There isn't a comment section at the bottom where you can go down there and bitch about it. Actually, there isn't even one here. Maybe there is. I don't know. I'm not going to search for a link for it, but it looks like there isn't. Is that? I don't know. Well, anyway, you know, sometimes there is, and otherwise there's, like, the person that wrote the article, Neil E. Baudet. He don't want to get a bunch of fucking hate mail for just having that shitty headline that was there earlier. So now we're going to do what mainstream media also always is famous for doing, is when they want to imply something and make it scare you, they fucking turn it into a question when they know that they don't have the intellectual bravado or whatever you want to call it to go ahead and put one of those dingers on there that's clearly just over the top. Pedestrian deaths and traffic accidents have reached levels not seen in years, and a safety group has sought to explain why. It has identified several probable causes like digital distractions and an increase in driving. And now it has added another, marijuana. I don't really think they did, though. Over the 6 months of 2017, pedestrian fatalities rose sharply from a year earlier in states that had legalized recreational marijuana. According to the Governor's Highway Safety Association, in the rest of the country, such deaths declined. Well, gee, maybe it's because of that green rush I keep talking about, the green exodus and the subsequent increase in populations in places where cannabis is allowed. This isn't hard to figure out, guys. We're not making a definitive cause and effect link to marijuana, said Richard Redding, a traffic safety engineer at Sam Schwartz Consulting, who was the author of the study. The data, quote, is a marker for concern, he added. It may be a canary in a coal mine, an early indicator to address. Oh, boy. No, it ain't. You can't make these correlations and turn them into causations and then say, no, let's not do that. We're not saying that, but we are. I mean, that's exactly what you just did. And it's fucking just, it's just sad. It's ignorant, and it's really misleading. There's people that don't have a clue that this is just total garbage, and they'll fucking believe it. Pedestrian deaths are far higher than a decade ago, both in sheer numbers and as a share of traffic fatalities. In 2016, the last full year for which the Safety Association has data, nearly 6,000 pedestrians were killed, 16% of the overall traffic toll. Many factors can cause traffic deaths to rise, and safety experts say the increase in recent years are partly a byproduct of recovery from the recession. Quote, people are driving more when the economy is growing, Mr. Redding said. Populations are rising in urban areas where most pedestrian fatalities occur, and cities are more congested, especially ones that have influxes in populations due to people coming from states that don't allow medical marijuana. Not saying that that's causing wrecks, but hey, man, when the population grows faster than you can put up new road signs and shit, people will tend to run over people. This year, the group has called attention to a number for states that legalized recreational marijuana between 2012 and 2016. And it's funny because a couple of these on the list, they're talking about, remember, they're talking about the first 6 months of 2017, and then they're talking about places that legalized marijuana between 2012 and 2016. Actually, most of them on the list You have Alaska, Maine, and Massachusetts, and Nevada all just legalized in 2016 in November. And the first 6 months of 2017 didn't even have legal sales. None of these states have legal sales by then. So I don't know what you're even counting there. Them places already had some kind of medical marijuana going on before that. And then you have Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, as well as the District of Columbia, which did also. In Alaska and Maine, pedestrian deaths are so few that any changes may not statistically be significant to identify a clear connection to the drug. Are you kidding? That sentence should just be banned, because you shouldn't ever try to connect any of these to the drug unless you can point to it and be like, well, yeah, this is somebody was high and they ran over somebody, or the person that got ran over was so high he fell into the fucking road and got ran over. Like, this is so stupid. Marijuana don't fuck you up like this, guys. There's never been a more disingenuous commercial against marijuana than the one where they're at the drive-thru and fucking the stone kid at the drive-thru ran over someone on the sidewalk because they weren't paying attention or because they were so stoned after they got their munchies. Was that a real commercial? I don't know. That was ridiculous. Nobody does that, all right? Marijuana doesn't fuck you up like that. I just can't stress that out enough. Even if it's the first time you smoke it, I'm not saying smoke the joint for the first time, go driving. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying even if you did, it don't fucking fuck you up like this. If anything, you're going to pay attention more because you're going to be paranoid that you will hit something. That's how it works. Even in Colorado, a 12% jump in pedestrian deaths meant a total rose in 37 from the first half of the year from 33 in 2016. See? That's why when you say something like a 12% jump, that's not even a jump, even if it was bigger numbers. Like if this was from 370, from 330 to 370, which is a little bit of a spike there, you can't say it's a jump. This is just all scary, ways to frame your argument. Massachusetts was the only state in the group where such deaths decreased by 1. Well, I don't even know why you had Massachusetts on the list. Same with Maine, same with Nevada and Alaska. I don't see, oh boy, marijuana's legal now, guys. Well, the same people that smoked marijuana before smoke it still. You're not going to get a big increase in people that started smoking marijuana, especially since you don't have stores open yet. So I don't even know, whatever, man. I'm sure that those states are on the list because they've seen spikes, like Maine, Nevada, Alaska. There's probably some spikes. It didn't have nothing to do with marijuana, though. I'd be cautious about drawing a direct link to any potential cause, said Jason Levine, executive director at the Center for Auto Safety and Advocacy Group in Washington, D.C. But it's certainly worth trying to figure out why those numbers are what they are. See, this is always so, convoluted. It's like, no, you just said that you shouldn't draw any link. Because you can't. You absolutely can't. Among the unanswered question is whether and to what extent any link reflects marijuana use by drivers, pedestrians, or both. Bingo, just like I said. Russ Rader, spokesman for the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety, said his organization has not studied links between marijuana use and severe crashes that involve deaths. But he said insurance claims for all collisions, including fender benders, were about 3% higher in states that have legalized marijuana than in nearby states. And again, once again, doing this correlation, we're going to automatically put it there in your face. Hey, look at this. You didn't say it was causation, so you think you can get away with it. But that's what you're fucking implying every time, and it's insane how intellectually dishonest you're being and how often you do it and how often you're getting away with it because nobody seems to fucking care. I'm the only one calling that shit out. Mr. Redding said that the data he examined suggested increasing smartphone use might also be contributing to the rise in pedestrian fatalities. Do you think? In 2015 and 2016, the total rose roughly 10% each year. How about we actually look at the actual data and see, you know, I'm sure they test people when they're dead and there's a car involved because they want to give the fucking driver a ticket, or they want to give the pedestrian, you know, oh, you know, I don't think if a pedestrian gets ran over unless there's like some kind of party going on, like Mardi Gras or something. I don't think they test people that get ran over by cars to see if they're fucked up. And besides that, I mean, you don't really know what's going on here. You're just saying that a number is increasing, and you're saying that it has something to do with marijuana. There's absolutely no, to me, there's no trigger for that. Oh, you just looked at and seen that the states where you've seen some increases were places where marijuana got legalized. What is, you know, what is it about people that they sit around and try to make this connection all the time? Whenever they see something negative happening, they're like, it's got to be the weed. Like I said, the same amount of people probably smoke weed in all those places than did before legalization. It's like almost the only difference is you're not arresting them anymore. And I look at the people that don't smoke weed, and they fucking hate weed for whatever reason. I don't think they're ever going to want to smoke weed. They're like, weed? That shit's fucking gross. You're a loser if you smoke it. You blah, blah, blah. And then they repeat whatever Reefer Madeness thing that they got beat in their head. Quote, what it tells me is that there is a metric worth keeping an eye on, he said. And the metric he's talking about is look at those states that have legal marijuana and see if the numbers, you know, keep going up or what's going on. It's so ignorant. The Governors Association, which refers itself to as the state's voice on highway safety, found that 5 states, California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Arizona, accounted for 43% of all pedestrian traffic deaths. The states with the most pedestrian fatalities per 100,000 people were Arizona, New Mexico, Delaware, Louisiana, and Florida. Let's see. None of them, not a single one of those, have marijuana legalized. They all have varying degrees of medical marijuana programs, none of which, besides Arizona, I think. I don't know, maybe New Mexico too, you can smoke weed. Delaware, I'm not sure. But bottom line is those states there are not the ones that they're talking about with the legalized marijuana. That was, you know, one more time, Alaska, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. And of course, they're also talking about D.C., so there was some kind of spikes there too. And it's funny because they're trying to prove a point, and then they still leave the people in there that where the number didn't spike so much, and then they discounted one of the spikes by, oh, you know, it's only just a little bit because overall their numbers are so low, double digits. And that's the way it always is when you're looking at percentages. You can always scare people more. Oh, look, there's a big 15% spike. Who says 15% is even a spike? It could just be like a wave. It'll come back. So I don't know. You know, it'll go back down. It's a pendulum. And that's not a very high swing. Especially when you're talking about the difference between 33 and 37 or whatever it was. Come on. Yeah. Anyway, with the overall number of pedestrian deaths in the first 6 months of 2017 was lower than the 2016 period, the group said it projected that the rate for all of 2017 would be essentially unchanged from the year before. So this is all just bullshit anyway. They're just looking at some numbers and trying to make hay out of them in the first 6 months of 2017. Like, whoa, come on, man. They're just pouring over the data, trying their hardest to make marijuana sound like it's a demon, and they just can't do it. That's all this tells me. They're sitting here trying to turn it around and twist it like, ooh, is marijuana to blame? Or what was that other headline? What was that insidious bullshit? Pedestrian deaths rose in states where pot is legal, a study finds. Oh my God. When really the headline should be, hey, you know what? Marijuana isn't causing the fucking sky to fall like people always told you. Like Jeff Sessions has been bellowing about for like 35 years. That shit just ain't even really happening, man. That's what this article tells me. You want to talk about some puns? Check this one out. Keep local marijuana laws from going up in smoke. Now this seems like some kind of a press release. Well, it is, and it's from Koch Industries. Now, I'm not sure if you're going to go get a job at Koch Industries, if they care whether or not you can pass a piss test for marijuana. I don't know about that. But they put out a press release basically poking their weight around. And the guy that put this out here, Mark Holden, General Counsel and Senior Vice President of Koch Industries, he seems like a pretty legit guy. I read his little read more about here, and he seems like he's got his shit together. I always think of the Koch brothers industries as like this sinister thing, you know. I mean, they kind of are. They're running some major fossil fuel shit to the last drop is pulled and used, or whatever you want to say. But anyway, besides all that shit, let's see what they have to say about weed. In states across the country, from Alaska to California to Maine, citizens have spoken on marijuana. They have voted to legalize and regulate its sale and use for medical and recreational purposes. In other states, they have voted to decriminalize its use for possession. Koch believes it should be up to the states to decide whether to legalize or decriminalize it in accordance with their constitutional and legal processes. So this is Koch brothers also basically started the libertarian movement at one time. And that's kind of like one of their things has always been, individual freedom and states' rights and stuff like that. So this is kind of right on par as far as the Koch brothers go with marijuana policy. They're not saying anything extreme like, hey, the federal government should just legalize weed. But they are saying basically like, hey, what you doing? You know, this isn't cool. And we'll read more. But by rescinding a set of memos that largely discouraged federal prosecutors from bringing marijuana-related charges in jurisdictions that had legalized sales, the United States Justice Department has called into question every single local and lawful decision. When it comes to protecting the Constitution and the rights it guarantees, the Justice Department has an obligation without comparison. As citizens, we entrust it and the Attorney General of the United States with enormous responsibility. This includes the fair and equal application of law for all citizens, especially as it pertains to the 10th Amendment, which gives states the rights to enact and enforce their own laws. That Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a Republican appointee in a Republican administration, is undoing a Democratic appointee's work from a Democratic administration is irrelevant. Republicans and Democrats alike have criticized the decision, and for good reason. It does little to improve the lives of the people in our communities. Thank you. Politics matters little regarding the human impact of this decision. Koch backs policies that respect individual states' 10th Amendment rights, especially considering the tremendous progress on criminal justice reform made in state houses across the country. The legalization of marijuana in various states has also created an industry of entrepreneurs and investors, business owners, growers, and lawful distributors whose livelihoods are now at stake because of federal overreach. Resources spent fighting a misguided war on drugs should instead go towards programs for those re-entering society, including rehabilitation, treatment, and job training. Instead of prosecuting nonviolent drug offenders for doing what has already been legalized in a half a dozen states and decriminalized in several others, the administration would be better suited working with members of Congress to reform outdated sentencing laws. However well-intentioned these laws were upon implementation, they have ruined lives, torn apart families and communities, and have burdened taxpayers doing little to keep people safe. Yep, and I agree with that completely. But the Trump administration, especially Sessions Department of Justice, they are swamped with fucking prison lobby money to the point where they basically are only representing them. All right. So whatever. Good luck on this. The most successful states are those that have acknowledged that the time has come for a new, smarter approach to drug policy that respects individuals' human rights and ensures greater safety for our communities. In the District of Columbia, where residents have voted in 2014 to permit adults 21 or older to possess up to 2 ounces of marijuana and smoke privately, the number of cases involving the drug has dropped dramatically from 4,599 related arrests in 2010 to 587 last year. In turn, prosecutors have been able to focus on large-scale trafficking and violent crime instead of simple possession cases. The year is new, and there is still time to reverse course. Rather than grow the size and scale of the federal government and encroach upon the freedom of individual state and citizens, the Justice Department can reconsider their decision. They can choose to be on the side of the individual liberty and states' rights. They can choose to be on the side of the millions of Americans who have made their voices heard loud and clear. Read more, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I don't know how approved this was, but this guy is basically, yeah, he's like senior vice president of Koch Industries. So he's been around a while. He's homies with the Koch brothers. Do the Republicans give a fuck? I don't know. Probably not. Republicans usually don't give a fuck. They only give a fuck about the loudest donor that's screaming in their ear about whatever issue. This is a Washington rag, the Washington Examiner. And just for the hell of it, this is the Army Secretary, and he's been on the job a little over 3 months. After traveling the United States, Asia, and Europe to meet with soldiers, he stopped in his first gaggle with the Pentagon Press Corps on Thursday. Esper served 21 years in the Army before working on Capitol Hill and ultimately as Raytheon's top lobbyist. So now what we do is we just take lobbyists and we just stick them in the government. All right, this guy's the Army Secretary, just fresh out of the lobby field and right into the government. So he's talking about people that want to join the Army, and he's got these pot waivers. My recommendation for people that smoke weed is don't join the Army. Even though I did. Trying legal marijuana will not necessarily disqualify applicants who want to serve in the Army, Esper said. Quote, if a young kid comes in and says, quote, I'm a habitual user and I have no intent on giving it up because it is my God-given right, then sorry, you go somewhere else, Esper said. Wow. But yeah, like I said, if you plan on smoking weed, if you're going to join the Army, you're going to quit. That's all there is to it. And when you come back, you'll be right back. But if an applicant comes in and says, I'm in a state that has legalized marijuana, and I tried it once when I was 15 at a party, and it's not for me, and I have no intent on doing it, and oh, by the way, I'm a 3.2 GPA, and I'm on the basketball team, I'll take you. I'll give you a waiver, and I'll take you. That's nothing new, dude. I fucking told the recruiter that I smoked weed, and he gave me fucking golden seal. Oh, shit. That's not good. My joint just fell apart. The recruiter literally was like, here's a bottle of golden seal. Do these and come back piss clean. You'll be good to go. So, yeah, horse shit coming from the Army. Whatever, man. Nobody expects you guys to really give a shit about either way. As long as someone can pass that piss test, that's really all they care about. And they'll tell you how to do it. So I guess New Jersey isn't really ready. Let's see what's going on. We already heard how they were going to try to do some kind of decriminalization to try to get in the way of the legalization that's trying to foment, but none of that's really coming to fruition. If the state Senate were to vote today on whether New Jersey should legalize marijuana for recreational use, the bill would fail, according to a survey by New Jersey Cannabis Insider, a new New Jersey advanced media publication. Only 5 members of the 40-member Senate said they would vote yes when reached by telephone, in person, and by email over the past 3 weeks. Another 20 members said they would vote no, while 15 said they were undecided or did not respond. Here's a full list. I'm not going to link that. The measure needs 21 votes to pass the Senate and 41 to clear the 80-member state assembly. Governor Phil Murray, a Democrat who ran on a campaign platform that promoted legalizing cannabis, has said he would sign the bill as soon as it reaches his desk. But a vote is not imminent. State Senator Nicholas Scaturi, Democrat Union, the lead sponsor of the marijuana legalization and chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has not yet scheduled a hearing on the bill, S. 830. As of Monday, Scaturi said he remains undecided whether he will make changes to the current version, which is carried over from the last legislative session that ended in mid-January. Scaturi and State Senate President Stephen Sweeney, Democrat from Gloucester, have said they remain confident that they'll have enough votes when the time comes, but they have backed off an early prediction that the Democrats, which control the state legislature and executive branch, would get it done in the first 100 days of Murphy's term. Legalization foes are also mobilizing. A bipartisan group of lawmakers led by State Senator Ronald Rice, Democrat from Essex, introduced a bill earlier this month that would decriminalize marijuana possession of no more than 10 grams. The bill would also expedite the expungement of past marijuana possession arrests. So, yeah. Kind of an update to what I was already doing about New Jersey, but I'm thinking that you do not have enough support in the Senate, and that's because there's not enough Democrats that are on board, and they're making their voice known by saying, well, hey, we can do something besides legalization. Hey, what about decriminalizing? And if you look at the decriminalizing, it's just it's not, it's I guess it's okay. But what is it decriminalizing without legalizing? You're still saying, hey, the black market's fine. Sell us weed all day. So New Jersey, if they did legalize, like everywhere else, has people talking about banning people doing whatever. In this case, weed farms and dispensaries. Another shore town is expected a preemptive ban on sales as the state legislature continues to debate on whether or not they will legalize. Wall Township Committee is set to vote on an ordinance banning any businesses that sell marijuana or marijuana paraphernalia. The ordinance would also ban marijuana farming or manufacturing within the 32 square mile town. The committee meeting blah blah blah. And then the quote out of here is, I don't think it's a good thing to be part of, said Deputy Mayor Kevin Orender, a former narcotics officer with the New York Police Department. I wonder why he don't like it. It's still federally illegal. So why are we allowing this state by state? Because the people want it. That's why we have laws there, dude. Because people want fucking things to be different. So they fight to make things different. Why do we have it illegal in the first place? Oh yeah, because of a bunch of racist bullshit. And fucking the ending of alcohol prohibition obviously left a big power vacuum for prohibitionists. They didn't have nothing to deal with, so they decided, hey, let's pick on something else. And what is that going to be? It's going to be marijuana. And they got away with that shit for 80 plus years. They're still doing it. And you're a former cop, and you're just going to come in. You're the deputy mayor, and you're just like, you know what? We ain't going to let no weed growing or selling go on here legally. We're going to keep it illegal so that we can bust you and be corrupt and do corrupt shit ourselves with it. Whatever, man. We know what you're all about, former narcotics officer. Never. Once a narcotics officer, always a narc. What's going on here? Hold on, let me check out the camera. Make sure I didn't move too much. Okay. Mississippi police chief suspended after video showing alleged marijuana use surfaces. Man. Whatever, man. don't usually like to touch these stories, but I mean, it is Mississippi, so you can expect that he's going to get in some trouble. He is a police officer too, so you can expect that he's going to not get in trouble. I mean, we see police shoot unarmed people in the fucking back and don't get in trouble. So, I mean, we see people shoot, we see police officers shoot unarmed suspects or even just unarmed motorists like Philando Castillo, even though they have a permit and say they have their weapon and aren't going for their weapon. Oh yeah, they shot him because the cop shot him because he smelled weed. I forgot. Anyway, let's see what he's got to say for himself.
That's quite disturbing. I'm still trying to get over this video.
This evening, a WDAM exclusive. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The man who swore to uphold the law as chief of police in Lumberton appears to break it in front of a camera.
Wait, that wasn't him then? Okay.
It's quite disturbing. I'm still trying to get over this video.
This evening, a WDAM exclusive. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The man who swore to uphold the law as chief of police in Lumberton appears to break it in front of a camera.
That's right. Our Mike McDaniel is on your side and joins us live in the studio with the video you'll only see on News 7.
Yeah, we started asking questions after the chief was suspended recently and then unexpectedly submitted his resignation. We were told it was all about a personnel matter and never given a comment. Now, with this video, city leaders are talking.
Talking about what, man? So he smoked some weed, dude. Maybe we shouldn't worry about smoking weed when you're not on duty so much.
Yeah, but the police need to be...
This is Lumberton Police Chief Shane Flint on video smoking what he himself implies is marijuana.
Because I'm the only chief of police in Lumberton that likes to smoke weed.
While we don't know when the video was recorded, at times, Christmas music can be heard in the background.
I like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeers.
Also in the background, what appears to be Flint's chief uniform. Using vulgar language and a broken pipe, he laughs about being the chief of police and high.
You don't know no cool. Who the coolest is? Me. I'm the coolest.
To get some answers.
To be honest, man, the guy is drunk. You can clearly tell he's been drinking. The weed, to me, if you're trying to criticize someone for being reckless and having too much fun or whatever, I think it was because he drank too much.
We took our questions about the video to the police department, straight to Chief Flint.
We just wanted to know if we could ask you just
some questions
about your...
No, this is not good journalism. That's not how you do journalism. You don't just pounce on somebody when they don't expect it and just start asking them, fucking broadside them with questions about a controversial thing that happened. I know you're not going to get a meeting or get a legitimate interview and shit. You're going to get statements. If this guy thinks he's doing some good journalism, he's really not. He's doing attack journalism, and it's kind of Alex Jones used to do this shit back in the day. Sure, once in a while you might get the soundbite of the century or a good thing to pin on somebody later, but usually it's just rude and probably got you like, and I'm not for access journalism, but it's going to make it so these guys aren't going to be as open as they normally would be as far as the police are to the press.
I have no comment on that. I mean, it's already been covered, you know. What can we ask you about the video of you?
What video?
The video of you allegedly smoking marijuana?
I'm not aware of any of that.
I can show it to you.
I'm not aware of any of that.
You haven't seen the video?
No, sir, I'm not aware of it. I don't have no comment.
Would you like to see it?
No, sir.
We have the video. Would you like to see it?
And again, I feel kind of sorry for this police chief because he was obviously drunk. It was some kind of Christmas party or some shit. I don't know why there is a fucking video camera involved in that party, but you know, you gotta own up to that. It's on film. You gotta at least own up to it. But I feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for this attack journalism and this invasion of his privacy. Quite frankly, I know it's illegal, in Mississippi, and it's probably highly against the rules for cops to smoke weed, but I mean, it's just fucking weed, man. Why this big overhyped deal? And the only reason you can justify it is because under this guy's watch, there's probably people getting arrested for weed on a regular basis. Let's face it, it's fucking Mississippi. So of course, it's a little bit on the hypocrisy side, but that's just the story of the whole fucking drug war, ain't it? I mean, you know, this, I got a whole clip that's, you know, 20 articles deep at this point that I've been building up of just corrupt police in the drug war doing horrible shit. Just ungoddamn believable. It's got to stop, man. The only way to end all this shit and the corruption is to just get rid of the fucking prohibition on drugs. I mean, there's no other way around it. It's just perpetual. It's a never-ending war there's never going to be a conclusion. They're never going to get rid of all the drugs, that's for sure. They have no concern for doing that. No, they work for Big Pharma, who's pushing more drugs. And when you get hooked on drugs and you need to quit, they'll give you some drugs to do that too.
Chief Flint was not interested in talking to us and went back inside the department.
You
so
pounced on him. I feel sorry for him.
Quincy Rogers, who says he hadn't seen the video, so we showed it to him.
Holy shit.
What goes through your mind knowing that that's the chief of police in your city?
Here.
Disturbing.
According to board minutes, Flint was voted in as chief back in September by the Board of Aldermen. In mid-February, he was suspended for what city leaders and the
Alright, well, I've had enough of this fucking video anyway.
Mayor would only say
as far as I'm
personnel
concerned, you know, do your disciplinary action on him. Give him a ticket if you want. I don't know if you should fire him, per se, over it. If he's had some other issues, who knows? But whatever, man. I mean, this is 2018, and you're doing attack journalism on a police chief over smoking some fucking weed on a video where he's clearly drunk and didn't have the faculty to make good decisions. Speaking of not making good decisions, what about Hershey's? These guys just want to go drop lawsuits on people. And this ain't even my theory. This is actually what they're doing. They're going to go pop a lawsuit on you for using a name that sounds like some of their products on your product, if it's cannabis related, and just hope that you settle and get out of it. And in some cases, they just take your money. Perhaps the most famous confectionery peddler in the world has a well-documented history of actively protecting its trademarks, and the marijuana industry is no exception. Although Hershey has been relatively quiet in the marijuana sector since it sued 2 cannabis businesses in 2014, the company seemingly ramped up its oversight of possible trademark infringements in 2017. Hershey's, a Pennsylvania-based Fortune 500 company with an annual revenue of more than $7 billion, sent cease and desist letters last year to at least 2 California marijuana companies. Man, I hate that these guys are just sitting around in their boardroom and they're fucking bored and they got nothing better to do than they're looking on their phones at cool things on the internet, and they stumble upon some pictures of some, you know, marijuana food that had names that sounded like mocked up versions of their products. And what they do, they got really mad about it and decided that they were going to do something about it. And this is just par for the course for people like Hershey. Like, they do this to everybody, and they ain't just weed people. Oh yeah, this joint fell apart. There's no way that's going to smoke. Hold on one second. So Harborside was in their crosshairs, and so was Good Girl Cannabis Company, an edibles maker in rural Northeast California. While Good Girl Cannabis owner Kimberly Scott said her situation was resolved quickly and amicably, Harborside wound up fighting back after months of legal threats from one of Hershey's law firms. Harborside filed a suit against Hershey in December after receiving multiple demands from an Indianapolis law firm representing the confectioner. The lawyers wanted Harborside to pay $20,000 for liquidated damages and sign a settlement agreement with a confidentiality clause. Harborside refused confidentiality, and I told Hershey's that we were prepared to proceed with the litigation, said Henry Wykowski, Harborside longtime attorney. And guess what happened? They caved the next day. The case was voluntarily dismissed on January 31st, 2018, according to the court records, within weeks of Harborside's initial filing. Wachowski said sides reached a settlement agreement that outlined zero legal liability for Harborside with respect to Hershey's trademark infringement allegations. Harborside's director, Steve D'Angelo, characterized Hershey's attorneys as bullies. Quote, "We stood up to the Federal Department of Justice when they tried to close us down in 2012, D'Angelo said in a statement. Quote, "We are certainly not going to be intimidated by a candy company." I think this whole thing happened just so Steve D'Angelo could make that statement with this silly little hat on, because that's probably what happened right there. And I really wish I had video for that. Hershey's did not respond to requests from Marijuana Business Daily for comment. Nor did the law firm that represented the chocolatier against Harborside. So marijuana and Hershey's, they don't get along. They filed a suit against a Colorado edibles maker, Tincture Bell, and a Seattle dispensary, Conscious Care Cooperative, regarding edibles that were obvious parodies of classic Hershey candies. Hershey's won easily in both instances, with Colorado and Washington state companies settling instead of going to trial. It's unclear from court records if Tincture Tribble paid Hershey's any money, but Conscious Care Cooperative did not. At the end of it, we walked away not owing them anything. Conscious Care Cooperative co-founder Trek Halnagel told MJ Biz Daily. Halnagel, also founder of Dope Magazine, no relation to the Daily Dope Show, said Conscious Care attorney convinced Hershey's lawyers that the dispensary wasn't the guilty party, since it was an edibles reseller. And not the actual manufacturer that created the product name and logo. Kind of like Harborside. Tincture Bell also reached a settlement and remains in business. California attorney Amanda Conley, who has 7 years plus of experience in intellectual property disputes, said one of her marijuana business clients also received a cease and desist letter from Hershey's around 2014. Her client reached a quick settlement, she said, and no money changed hands. "We backed down pretty quickly, but so did Hershey's," she said. She said the Harborside case seems to be a ramping up just based on our limited experience with this company. Hershey's hasn't focused solely on marijuana businesses when either threatening or filing lawsuits against companies it believes have committed trademark infringements. Just two examples of many from recent years. In 2009, Hershey sued a West Virginia company named Reese's Nursery and Landscaping for allegedly infringing on its Reese's Peanut Butter Cups trademark. And in 2015, the company sued New Jersey Chocolate Importer for alleged trademark violations. Wachowski, Harborside's attorney, believes Hershey took its trademark concerns a step too far with his client. Harborside spent months responding to Hershey's requests and acquiescing to demands regarding the products in question. Quote, "Hershey's came on strong," Wachowski said. "We thought this was an appropriate time to take a stand, not only on behalf of ourselves, but on behalf of other people who are similarly situated. Thank you guys for basically slapping back at the big giant." Harborside then filed a suit based on repeated demands from Hershey's attorneys. Hershey wanted a $20,000 payout from Harborside and an agreement that would have forbidden the dispensary from disclosing the existence of a settlement, including the payment. So they're basically just extorting them, like, hey, you got shit that looks like kind of our product, so if you don't give us $20,000, we're going to sue you for whatever. The case had another twist. Hershey told Harborside that Jolly Meds was violating the confectioner's trademark for Jolly Ranchers, yet didn't send any correspondence at all to the infused products manufacturer. So the whole case was based on the Jolly Meds, and yet they didn't even try to go after Jolly Meds. Probably because Jolly Meds wasn't big enough for him to just extort $20,000 out of. And by the way, didn't we, I might have not said it loud enough that one of the stipulations was a fucking gag order. You know, like, hey, we're going to extort this 20 grand out of you and then gag order your ass. Jesus Christ. The only practical impact on the owner of J-Meds, they changed their name to J-Meds because of this shit. So anyway, that's pretty much it for this one. And again, thank you Harborside, I guess, for looking out for everybody else on that tip. Now, Michigan, this is pretty weird. I don't know how important it is. The only thing I could think of is that maybe there's a police directive that got sent out along with this bullshit. Last year on one of my weekly shows, I did an update about this whole trunk box transporting law that Michigan decided to throw a wrench into the medical marijuana program. The Medical Marijuana Act doesn't say anything about transporting your medicine in a car. And it especially doesn't say that you know, we should worry about it and make laws to do it. There was no directive, but the state just decided to make up some rule where you had to throw your weed in a box. And then that got found unconstitutional by the Court of Appeals. So state legislators stalled an attempt Tuesday to repeal a statute that regulates carrying marijuana inside cars. The Michigan Senate voted 19-16 against the House bill. The legislation would have annulled the law classifying vehicle transportation or possession of marijuana as a misdemeanor unless it's enclosed in a case in the trunk or in a case not readily accessible from the vehicle's interior if there is no trunk. Bill supporters said recent Michigan Court of Appeals case rendered the provision moot. The higher court ruled in 2016 that medical marijuana patients in compliance with the Medical Marijuana Act in Michigan cannot be prosecuted for violating the conflicting statute on transporting marijuana. Those without a medical card are already prohibited from possessing the substance in any scenario. The bill's sponsor, Republican Peter Lucido, said as a veteran lawyer the rejection of the measure Tuesday was a shock. Did I say he was a Republican? No, he's just a representative. I don't know what his affiliation is, but anyway, he says, it's a no-brainer, the Shelby Township Republican, there you go, said. If we don't repeal a statute that's unconstitutional, what in the hell am I doing here? And that's a good point, man. What's the point of the government if it doesn't even work? You know what I mean? The bill passed the House with a near unanimous vote in October, and that was the update I remember doing. Among its supporters were the Michigan State Police was even behind it. I mean, it's just common sense, man. It's already unconstitutional, so fucking repeal the thing already. Senate Majority Leader Arlen Meekoff, a Republican from West Olive, said his chamber rebuffed the legislation due to unease over its repeal of requiring a substance to be locked away from a driver's reach. Quote, it could be openly carried, almost like an open receptacle, he said about the proposed changes. Our caucus didn't feel like that was quite the right way to go. What? It's just medical marijuana, man. It ain't like just because you can open it and reach it and even light it up and smoke it, it's not gonna, like, you know, I don't understand what you guys act like marijuana is even more intoxicating than alcohol or something. It's fucking unreasonable. The bill's opponents also said that instead of repealing an existing provision, the state should amend it by codifying updated law on driving with marijuana into Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. No, we're fine, don't bother. Skeptics also said that vehicle transportation of alcohol has always been restricted to unopened containers inside trunks. Marijuana should likewise be hidden away from easy access. Now that's not even true. Unopened containers anywhere is what alcohol is, not inside trunks. State Senator Rick Jones, a Grand Ledge Republican, said he was blindsided by Tuesday's nixing. Jones said under the proposed repeal, Michigan would have maintained its zero tolerance for driving under the influence, a hard line that applies to medical marijuana patients as well. Quote, I had no idea there was a problem, and for some reason people didn't want to vote for it. And maybe because it had the marijuana name attached to it. No, I think this was pretty fucking calculated, dude. 19 to 16, there was some votes that were basically, I don't know, somebody whipped them up. That had to be. This wasn't some perchance vote, all right? The good news is the bill can be reconsidered later in the Senate. Lucido said the bill's intention was to maintain consistency with the higher court that effectively repealed the current law. The senators who struck down the bill did not have complete knowledge of the statute or ruling, he said. Quote, had they known the information, I believe the reconsideration now is a no-brainer. So I guess you just got to tell the senators that the thing that you're repealing is an unconstitutional bill, unconstitutional law, or whatever you want to call it. And what I was saying about the police directive is this could have came out with a police directive. Hey, if someone has medical marijuana out in the cockpit, not in a lockbox in the trunk, give them a ticket. In the old days, that ticket was $500, and if you wanted to fight it and beat it, it was $500 to do that. Now we got the court precedent, probably a little less than $500, but it's still going to cost something to beat it. Ohio senator seeks review of state's medical marijuana program. Might have heard about this audit of the program. A state lawmaker moved Thursday to force a thorough review of Ohio's medical marijuana program as questions pile up over its process for selecting grower applicants. This is an AP article that Cannabis shot through, which usually when they do that it's total garbage and propaganda, but this one's just some basic facts about the story, so I'll go ahead and read it. Republican Senator Bill Coley of Cincinnati proposed legislation that would require State Auditor Dave Yost to conduct and release performance audit of the program. The bill holds up grower, processor, and tester licenses until program flaws can be addressed. Ohio's medical marijuana law, passed in 2016, allows people with any of 21 medical conditions, including cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and epilepsy, to buy and use marijuana if the doctor recommends it. It doesn't allow smoking. The program was supposed to be up and running by September 8th, Coley said, and his bill would not affect that timing. As a human endeavor, there's going to be mistakes made, he said. The question in somebody's character is, what do you do when you find out about it? The Ohio Department of Commerce acknowledged last week that a scoring error led to one company's inadvertent exclusion from the list of a dozen big marijuana growers receiving provisional licenses. The agency said it identified the mistake after Yost expressed concerns that 2 employees had complete access to the scoring data. The department offered to put the program on hold, but Yost said in a letter to the agency sent Wednesday that it's too late for that. Spokesman Carrie Francis said Thursday that the department hasn't yet seen the legislation, so was unable to comment. The acknowledged error in scoring has been accompanied by additional allegations of mistakes by others. A lawsuit filed by some unsuccessful applicants earlier this week claims state regulators failed to follow their own rules when awarding provisional licenses for growing facilities late last year. Several groups allege various failures in the licensing process, including scoring errors, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and undisclosed loopholes in the security of information. They ask a judge to revoke the licenses and prevent the department from issuing operators permits to the companies. Yost, a Republican running for Attorney General, said Thursday that he and his staff will review Coley's legislation and work closely with him and the legislator to take steps necessary to ensure Ohioans have confidence in the medical marijuana program. He said his office is also continuing to review processes and controls at the Commerce Department and identify any additional system weaknesses. Okay. I don't understand it. I read all that and I still am just as clueless as to what's going on here as the next guy. Sounds like some people are getting churned down for applications and they're just making excuses up as to why, even though really there is no excuse. We should get more information out of this AP release, like how many licenses were put in for, how many got them, whatever. So this article here is kind of silly, but it's real. This Las Vegas airport is letting people dump their marijuana before flying. And, you know, this funny thing about the headline is it says marijuana, but when I look at the fucking close-up of the photo, yeah, I guess my internet's choking on me here. Ugh, come on. Disposal for prescription and recreational drugs. Can I zoom in? Yeah. Pursuant to Clark County Code, blah, 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 it's unlawful to possess or advertise marijuana, cannabis, THC on Clark County Department of Aviation-owned property. Penalties include, but are not limited to, prosecution, arrest, blah, blah, blah. So, no advertising marijuana anywhere on property, but could they have said anything about marijuana here instead of just broad stroking it like that? Anyway, if you had drugs of any kind on you and you were walking up to this door right here, would you put your drugs in there or in there? That's my question. What happens in Vegas can really stay in Vegas. Tourists catching a flight out of Sin City can now dump their leftover legal marijuana in metal containers set up at the airport. Tell me this isn't just some advertisement from Time Magazine for you to... That's who wrote this, in case you guys can't see up there. They want people to stick their weed in here, I guess, man. They're getting too many prescription drugs and heroin and meth. They want some weed in that green box. That's why it's green, guys. So buy some weed, make sure you got some leftovers, and then feed this little guy here. 10-gram bins dubbed amnesty boxes prevent federal transportation agents from finding pot on passengers during security screenings. Well, how ridiculous. The drug is legal in Nevada, but it's still banned in the US by the U.S. government. The containers were installed last week following a county ban on marijuana possession and advertising at McCarran International Airport, aiming to keep it in compliance with federal law. They are bolted to the ground and designed so marijuana prescription drugs can be dropped in, not taken out. The amnesty boxes are offered as a way to help people comply with this ordinance, airport spokeswoman Christine Cruz said in an email. Transportation Secretary Administration agencies normally hand over marijuana-related cases to law enforcement. Las Vegas police officer Aiden Ocampo Gomez said no citations have been issued stemming from the airport's ban on marijuana possession and advertising passed in September. The boxes are something travelers may have seen before. At least 2 airports in Colorado where recreational marijuana is legal also offer amnesty boxes. But they're likely to be a bigger draw at the Las Vegas airport, which saw 48.5 million passengers last year. I guess they're expecting these boxes to be chock full of weed, guys. Legal sales of recreational marijuana began in the state on July 1st, and they have exceeded expectations. That's despite a ban on consuming it in public, including the Las Vegas Strip, hotels, and casinos. Those 21 and older with a valid ID can buy up to 1 ounce of pot and use it only in private homes. The airport boxes display Clark County's ordinance and clearly marked with bold black font stating disposal for prescription recreational drugs. They contrast sharply with the nearby trash cans. But like I said, who wants to give their drugs to this guy? A contractor, not police, will initially empty the boxes multiple times per week and then adjust the schedule as usage patterns develop. Sure. Crew said the county aviation department plans to install 20 bins but could add more. In addition to the boxes placed Friday outside the airport, 3 were set up at the nearby car rental facility. The remaining 7 bins will be installed at smaller area airports, and other department-owned properties. Man, that is the shadiest shit I've ever heard of. Anyway, in other news, Maine legislator marijuana committee approves regulatory bill. I don't even know why I care about this. You know LePage is just going to fucking burn anything that hits his desk that has anything to do with weed. But here we go. And sometimes I get my news from the local people. And I find that they're usually the best source. It's usually short and sweet, just the facts and the good quotes. And not a lot of fluff, not a lot of opinion. So, I mean, I'd hit the play button here, but what are we going to get?
No marijuana social clubs and no sharing of the state's marijuana tax revenues with communities that host cultivation or retail pot sales. Those were some of the changes made to Maine's adult use cannabis law. The Marijuana Legalization Implementation Committee took their final vote today on the language of the overhauled bill. The 17-member panel was forced to reconfigure the legislation after Governor LePage's veto. The state proposed a 21.5% excise tax at wholesale on marijuana products. Cannabis growers would pay $335 in taxes per pound of pot sold.
I think what we wanted to do was provide a tax structure that didn't have everything at the point of purchase, that also had an excise tax. An excise tax allows the state to be able to...
She looks like she totally knows what it's like to process a pound of marijuana.
...prepare and understand how much will be coming in a more consistent way.
We made a few changes. We've put the entire regulation of this new industry under the Department of Administrative and Financial Services. That's fine. We've also moved the medical program.
Yeah, because financial services, man, they know everything about marijuana.
Leaving it completely intact, but move that over to the same agency. We've cut down a little bit on the number of plants that people can own. But basically all of our changes have been...
That's a pretty big deal, dude.
Designed to make the bill a little bit more manageable for Maine people, and also try to get enough votes that we're actually going to get it over the finish line.
See, that's what I don't understand, is you're acting like the finish line is getting it through the legislation process. No, the finish line is when it gets across the governor's desk. And as long as LePage is in there, it doesn't matter if you cut the plant down, plant count, and how much weed people can have on them, or what the tax number is. None of that shit matters to LePage. He's not going to let any of it go through. So do all the work you want and get ready for that shit to get vetoed. But what you're really trying to do is take what the people put together and the people voted for, and you're trying to fucking... I don't know, dissolve it down to nothing?
The opt-in for municipalities, which I know is important to a lot of people, but they did not put any sort of limit on the commercial cultivation of cannabis. And then they also cut the personal grow of cannabis from 6 plants to 3.
There you have it, the corporate takeover once again. Oh, you guys had 12 plants, now we knocked it down to 6, now we're knocking it down to 3. I think what it went down, the full story is they had it at 6, and then they're like, okay, but we can tell counties and municipalities that they can knock that even down to 3 if they want.
Some lawmakers say the high tax rate may prevent small cultivators from getting into the market. Others say the rate is actually much lower than other states with a legal cannabis market. The bill is expected to reach the full legislature in a few weeks for votes. It needs 2/3 support to override a potential governor's veto.
It's never going to get that, and the governor is always going to veto it, so I'm not too excited about it. And Normal even wrote their take on it, Paul Armentano himself. Lawmakers push to rewrite 2016 voter-approved marijuana law. And yeah, it's basically what I said. I don't, in the interest of time, I'm going to just skip this article, but you know, it's the whole timeline is basically that this guy right here isn't going to let it go through. The legislator keeps trying to chop it down, acting like, oh, it's because he's going to be hardcore on it, so we got to, like, you know, give him something that he's going to like. He's not going to like anything. What do we got here?
Legit as we can, and now we're being told to stop.
Sorry.
We've spent everything we possibly have to survive and to make it legit as we can, and now we're being told to stop.
There was no decision made as to what we were going to do. So people deciding to buy property here, grow marijuana here, etc., they were doing it as a speculation. They were taking a risk. That's equivalent to going to Las Vegas. You were gambling and you took a chance.
No, you weren't the one that did it because you just came in after this was done, but this town was broke. This county was broke because of the fires, and they were looking for a way to bounce back, and they incentivized people to come in. They begged people to come in and saying, oh, you'll be able to run marijuana farms. And they didn't have regulations until now, and now that they do, you're not going to let them do it? You're a piece of shit, dude.
So I think it's really important that we're seen as who we are, and we're local family farmers that are part of this community. It's this divisive ideology that's really put our community against each other, and that, you know, we can't have that. We're part of this community. We're contributors, and, you know, we coach soccer and our kids go to school here, and it's important that not only we feel safe and included, but that our kids do also.
We need a timeout. We need to stop. It's an environmental disaster that has been created in the county. 1,200 grow sites have been identified by our sheriff.
All right, so it looks like you do have an issue here in this particular plot here. I don't know why you're just showing us like this, what looks to be, to me, like at the end of some road somewhere, an illegal operation all the while, through and through. If this was ever a legal operation, I'd be surprised. So it looks to me like you're just demonizing people that are doing legitimate shit by showing some disaster that happened because somebody they might have even got busted within the last few months. I don't see a house anywhere, do you? All I see is a bunch of fucking like ramshackle buildings. So I don't know, man. Your context is a little weird, dude.
And there's probably even
see that I don't see a like an environmental disaster here. What I do see is some hills that got smoked out by a forest fire not too long ago, and it's trying to recover.
More that we don't know.
This ban is not just a cannabis issue. It's a community issue. It's a county issue. And we all need to come forward with a new unified voice of non-cannabis people and cannabis people, because we're all in this together. We are dedicated to preserving the environment. This is beautiful land. We love it here.
Here you are. You're in the watershed of the state of California.
Again, they're in a this. You know how I can tell this is an illegal grow operation? Because I used to do those in the middle of the woods. You have irrigation because you don't want to. You're not anywhere legal. You're in the middle of the woods, hiding surrounded by trees. This is totally an illegal operation. This guy is just making hay. He's pointing out something that probably wasn't a very good thing going on, and he's just like conflating people trying to do legitimate shit with this.
Provide the water supply to Contra Costa County, to San Jose, to not only there, but Los Angeles as well, and even down as far as Imperial Valley. That water comes from here.
What are you talking about, dude?
If we can't keep this area clean, you're going to get it down in your drinking water somewhere else.
This guy's got reefer madness that we have never even considered before. But he's full of shit, and he's sitting here in some illegal, almost Mexican drug cartel looking grow op and just talking mad shit, throwing people under the fucking bus. So, yeah, you're gonna get this everywhere, man. Sorry about this, guys, but apparently when you move to California, you gotta make sure you don't move into, like, the area that was, you know... Well, another thing that might have happened in that one grow spot, I might have been wrong. Maybe it was a legitimate spot. But it looks like it got smoked out by that forest fire I was talking about. And yeah, wherever that happens, it's going to look ugly. This looks like it ain't... They're not doing any ecological disasters there. I think this is the one that they were profiling. That looks good to me. I don't see any ecological disasters, environmental disasters, none of that. None of that shit looks bad here either. This looks like it got smoked out by forest fires. So, I don't know. I don't know what this dude's talking about, but California has serious issues going on with people not being able to get legitimate. Because, quite frankly, it's going to uproot their whole lifestyle to either meet the regulations or whatever, you know. And that's all I got for this weekly podcast. Again, you can support the show by picking up one of these fancy shirts. And, yeah, tune in next time for more updates. And we'll keep drudging through the cacophony of bullshit together as all these reform laws come to fruition from coast to coast and around the world, man. See you next time.